Pirates, I can reject everything. 81-100. 081. Landing in Nami's hometown, save the beautiful navigator. Chris, in the training room. In the past few days, everyone's mood is very high, and everyone is very excited. The sweetheart queen pulled her pale blonde hair together and said with a smile. Bei Bang took a breath and said lightly, for a pirate, there is nothing more worthy of a bounty. Gao Karina nodded, blinked her beautiful eyes, and said with a sly look, she said with a smile, that is hundreds of millions of Baileys, a lot of small money, how can you not be excited? We haven't entered the Great Tao yet. After a while, our bounty will be more and more. Haley Ha Ming Ha. Corona floated in the air and let out a silver bell-like laughter. She was very happy. Nami has been restless these days. She was shocked by Chris and others. She has not recovered to look at the girls. Blinking her big bright eyes, she showed an embarrassed look on her pretty face. She was embarrassed to say that everyone was amazing, but I was the worst. Seriously, staying with you guys makes me feel really stressed. Nami shrugged and smiled bitterly. The East China Sea is a very small place, and the pirates here are very. The feeling that a countryman sees Watchung Town, and I feel so ashamed. Ju has Erlang's legs crossed, her delicate chin is supported by her jade hand, and Nami is placed in her hand. What a shame. I am very envious of you. You speak candidly, and you don't need to hold back when you have anything. How wonderful. Baccarat stroked her crimson hair, frowning her eyebrows, and said, Nami's character, I also like it very carefree. Just then, there was a call from outside the door. In front is the village of Kokoja, in front of. Hearing the voice outside, Nami was the first to react. May's eyes lit up, and she said with great excitement, here we are, finally we are in the village. With Chris here, the villagers will be saved now, and they will no longer have to be persecuted till the end. Happy, so happy. The people here, the relationship between Karina and Nami, is undoubtedly the best. She looked at Nami, her eyebrows were curved, her pretty face showed a happy look, and she followed up, yeah, that evil dragon pirate group, it's dead now. Corona flew around in the air and said with a smile, head to head, wait for this princess to help Nami as well. Out of breath. Let these abominable fish people see the power of this princess. Haley Betty exhaled the smoke, and said calmly as always, stop talking nonsense here, let's go out. Sweetheart Queen nodded and looked at the man in front who was constantly busy, asked with a smile, Chris, aren't you going down? Say something to Lafitte, quick fight. Chris waved the blood-red sword without turning his head. He just said something lightly when he heard the man's words. The girls couldn't help but glance at each other. They all shook their heads and laughed bitterly. Is the case? Karina shrugged, with a helpless expression on her pretty face. She said in confusion, Chris is a cultivator, why would he want to move around? Rona nodded and said with a smile, I can't say the same, mainly because these murlocs are too weak to attract Chris. Okay, since Chris can't go down, let's go out quickly. After Betty finished speaking, she walked directly to the door. Queen Sweetheart glanced at Chris for the last time and said speechlessly, actually, I feel so boring, I don't know how Chris persevered. In addition to practicing every day, it is still practice. Just like a robot, the icy Leiju stood up, took elegant steps, and said with a smile, the main thing is that the pressure is too great. The guys on the boat, all of them are trying to become stronger. Chris doesn't try harder, definitely he will be surpassed. He turned to look at Nami, smiled, and was very gentle and relieved. Nami, although Chris didn't land on the island, you don't have to worry about it. With Lafitte and the others here, that's enough. Baccarat nodded slightly, and said with a smile, you can really rest assured, there will be no problem. These guys on board. Although he is rebellious, his strength is really strong and his work is very reliable. Nami nodded again and again, waved her small hand, and said quickly, if there is no bite, I won't worry at all. Each of these squad leaders is very strong. I believe in their strength. The girls chatted and laughed, and walked out one after another. On deck. Vassos looked at the island in front of him, raised his arms, laughed and said, "This is the hometown of Sailor Shinami. It's so down and out, why ha 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 ha." Poison Q leaned against the chair with a weird smile. Should he use his chi directly to poison all the murlocs and villagers inside? Okay, that's fine. Luo carried the ghost to cry, and said coldly, "This way next year, today, I can go to worship you." Hawkins is playing cards, and he still looks like a dead man. Judging from his appearance, his lifespan is not so short. Jin tried the hardest, and almost caught up with the captain. Lafayette looked at the nigger next to him, turned his cane and said, "If we don't work harder, I'm afraid it won't take long before he will catch up." Bai Wan, the captain has already said that this guy is very talented, and his training speed is quite amazing. Vashes nodded and said with a big laugh, "Although this nigger is a bit louder, it's really amazing that he wants to be a deputy captain, and the speed of cultivating a domineering armament is really enviable." At this moment, there was a sound of footsteps, the aroma was fragrant, and the girls appeared. Luo glanced behind the girls, shrugged Ling's shoulders, and said coldly, "It seems that the captain did not bother to land on the island." Did Zhao? Hawkins put away the cards and said calmly, "This is not surprising. After finishing a battle with no thoughts, how could the captain pay attention?" Du Kyuhei laughed and said strangely, "Since the captain can't go down, then I can let go of my hands and feet and poison a lot of people." Agent stopped cultivating with an indifferent expression. "Don't kill too fast later. I'm going to find someone stronger, and do Lafitte well." Just now Chris explained it. Bakara looked at the fair-skinned man, and said with a slight smile, "Quick fight, let's not delay." The sweetheart queen nodded, smiled and said, "Yes, he just said 4 words, quick fight. Quick decision. Then, no and then. He. 082. Naomi's older sister, Naochi Gao appears. Helpless, I am very helpless." Bosses shrugged his shoulders and said speechlessly, "The captain is like this, he doesn't care about anything, he doesn't care about us at all." Lafitte turned to Baccarat to the right, adjusted his top hat, and said gently, "Since the captain has explained it, then we must end the battle early. Anyway, for these weak fish people, just kill them all." Luo carried the demon sword and cried, and said coldly, "Then don't waste time, let's go." At this time, Nami looked at them with a grateful look on her pretty face, smiled sweetly, and said thank you, sorry to everyone. Karina patted her shoulder and said with a smile, "Nome, what nonsense are you talking about? Everyone is a team, we should help you, why be so polite?" Dancing in the air, a silver bell-like laughter sounded. "That's right, you're our navigator, it's very important, Haley Haley Haley." Vashes waved at Nami and said impatiently, "Since the captain said so, we will definitely help out, end the battle early, don't chat here and jump directly to the island after finishing talking." Lafitte glanced at Nami and smiled slightly, "Your thanks, we accepted this thanks from a beautiful girl. If you refuse, it will be bad." A group of people got off the boat one after another and started to head towards the town. Nami acted as a guide, with a beautiful smile on her pretty face. She introduced, "Kokoja village is a very beautiful small village. The villagers here are very enthusiastic and help each other." Immediately after asking for warmth, Nami shook her head and said angrily, "But since the fish people came, this peaceful and beautiful place has been completely destroyed. These damn fish people force the villagers to buy their lives with money. Adults have to pay 100,000 yuan per month, and children will be brutally killed if they fail to pay 50,000 yuan per month." Nami clenched her silver teeth tightly, clenched her small fists, and said angrily, "My mother Belmer was killed by these bastards." Karina patted her shoulder with concern, "Nami, this is all over, don't be too sad. After a while, these wicked people will be killed, which can be regarded as evil and evil. I believe that your mother knows about it, and she will be relieved." Perona nodded, followed by persuading, "Wait, let Lafitte and the others stop being cruel and leave these bastards lives. You killed them yourself to avenge them, yeah, don't be sad, Nami." Meaty and the others quickly became relieved and cared about her. Suddenly, a woman's voice came from the front. Nami, you're back. Nuo Chigao walked out slowly from a small alley, looked at the people around Nami, and asked with a puzzled expression. Nami, who are they? Looking at this blue-haired beauty, everyone was stunned for a moment. Who is this? Nami hurriedly took a step forward, and she looked happy and said excitedly, Nuo Chigao, come on, let me introduce to you. Then, looking at the daughters of Baccarat, he said with a smile, my sister, Nuo Chigao, both of us, were adopted by Belmer. Turning to look at Nuo Chigao, Kuai said, Nuo Chigao, I'm joining the Chris Pirates now. I asked them to help, tell you, they are very strong, so they are sisters. The girls from Baccarat nodded to Nuochi and greeted politely. No wonder they didn't look alike at all, so dared to feel like this. Queen Sweetheart smiled and understood what was going on. Karina looked at Yan Nuoki's height, her beautiful eyes seduced him to be sly. She smiled and praised, Nami is very beautiful, and her sister is even more beautiful. Perona was flying in the air, nodded, and agreed, it's really pretty, and she has a great figure. I'm so envious that Meaty stroked her pale blonde hair, and sighed, this is the so-called sister flower. Very rare. Zanuchigao nodded at these people, then looked at Nami, and said eagerly, Nami, how can you ask others to help? How powerful are the dragons, don't you know? If you do, you will kill them. Moreover, our village will also be implicated, and my sister is against you. After he finished speaking, he turned his head to look at the people in front of him, made a look of apology, and said embarrassedly, I'm sorry, Nami has caused you trouble. There are too many bad people here. You should leave quickly. If you stay here, you will be discovered and you will be in danger. Thank you for coming to help Nami. I will say thank you for her. Please leave quickly, everyone. Shas has always been straightforward, and he hates these red tapes the most, so he said, Maid, it's just a few little ones, still so troublesome. If you want to stay here, then you stay. After saying that, I will not accompany you, and then stride forward directly, and don't bother to pay attention to these chattering guys. Poison Q rode on Stallone and said with a weird smile, it's finally about to start, wait a minute, laugh at Hiccup. I poisoned Agent one by one, not willing to be left behind, walked in the front, and said indifferently, this time I want to check for strength, you must pick a good opponent. Don't fight with me. A few beautiful ladies, let's go over and destroy them first, and you can talk slowly about Lafitte looking at Baccarat and a few people, bending down slightly, very gentlemanly. Seeing these people walking straight forward, completely ignoring her own advice, Nuochi stomped her feet in a hurry, her pretty face full of anxiety, and said quickly, don't go, you guys come back and see Nami. Hurriedly said, Nami, stop them, you were interrupted by Nami before you finished speaking. All right. Nami patted Nuochigao's fragrant shoulders, her delicate and fair face 1.9, showing a look of joy, and said with great joy, you don't know, they are so strong and strong. Do you know the bounty for these people? The minimum is tens of thousands of Baileys. Nami held up her little hand, and she was very excited and said something very excited. And you know, Captain Chris offered a reward of 100 million Baileys and 100 million Baileys. Do you know what this concept is? Hee hee. 083. Damn fish people, all die. Shock. After hearing Nami's words, Nuo Chigao was stunned, her beautiful eyes widened, her mouth opened slightly, and her pretty face was full of horror. She was born in the East China Sea, and she didn't have much knowledge at all. From her point of view, the evil dragon with a bounty of 20,000 yuan and Bailey is already the strongest existence and is invincible. Now that 100 million has come directly, what is this? It's a scary festival. That's right, Nuochigao, you heard that right. Nami nodded and said confidently, you have no idea how powerful they are. Just a few days ago, the overlord of the East China Sea, Click. It was killed by the few people just now. The people below died and escaped. This is the result of Chris's failure to take action. If he makes a move, no one can escape. In short, you can rest assured, this time the dragon and the others are sure to die. And Karina, who cannot survive, looked at Nuochigao, blinked her beautiful eyes, and said with a smile, Sister Nami Kai, you don't believe in Nami. If so, 11 can't doubt us. Look at us, like people who can make jokes. It's impossible. Shanluona nodded repeatedly and let out a clear laugh. If you don't believe it, let's go and see it now, and we'll know the result immediately. Queen Sweetheart gathered her hair, smiled and said, since Chris has given an order, they will definitely end the battle quickly. If we don't hurry up, we won't catch anything after a while. Bei Gang took a puff of cigarettes, as always indifferent. Let's go, I would like to see what these fish people look like. Needy looked at Leju and Baccarat, her eyebrows curved, and she said gracefully, speaking of which, I've never seen a murloc before, so it must be scary. Ruo Chigao listened to the conversation of the few of them, and there was still a look of worry on her pretty face. She really couldn't rest assured that if this was a victory, then of course it would be a good thing, and the villagers would be able to live a good life, but if they failed, it's all straight up. At that time, the villagers will definitely be beaten badly, and even Zhu Chigao, who will kill many people. Don't worry, how could I do such an unreliable thing? Jame kept walking and said with a smile, if I don't have enough confidence, how dare I ask them to help? I don't want to hurt everyone. It's not that I don't believe you, but this matter is too important to make any mistakes. Nuo Chigao shook his head lightly, and said in awe, forget it, it's too late to say this now, I just hope the situation is really what you said. Inside the village of Kokoja, inside a wide manor. At this time, there are many murlocs here. Some are basking in the sun, some are drinking drinks, some are swimming, and they are all very leisurely and free, taking this place as their home. Really good. The evil dragon rock reclining chair, shaking the wine glass, said proudly, it's better to stay on the shore, it's much better than Fishman Island, scary ha ha ha. Kruby nodded, looked serious, and said, this place is indeed much better than his hometown. There are fine wines and various delicacies, and there are no restrictions. All human beings are afraid of us. Those who are greedy for life and fear of death can be killed directly if they want to. Such a day is really wonderful. Ju was lying on the ground, basking in the sun, and Yang Yang said, yes, I like it here so much. Nguyen Chu has nothing to do every day, so he goes out to do some damage, find a few villagers at random, and beat him up. It's great. Pissarro enjoys holding a gourd in each hand, waving it at the side, making rustling noises, laughing. I also like it very much, it can bring me inspiration, so that I can create more good music, ha ha ha. At this time, at the gate of the manor, there was a high-pitched laughter. Bashes raised his arms and said with a big laugh, this is the murloc, all of them are rubbish to death. We've all come here, and we didn't even hear the siren. What a bunch of darn bastards. Way haha. Poisonous Q's eyes were ruthless, and he said with a weird smile, I don't know anything else, now I just want to take it. These murlocs came as test subjects. He. Luo was as cold as always, and said lightly, not much else to say, end early, the captain is still waiting for us. Ajin had already selected his opponent, walked towards Kruby quickly, and said indifferently, that guy has handed me over to paint, try my recent training results. In that case, let's make a quick decision and finish the battle in 3 minutes. Lafitte turned his cane, smiled slightly, and set a time limit. Halkins looked at these fish people and said in a low voice, from our Dojima, their fate has been doomed. At this time, all the murlocs in the manor reacted, and one by one, they quickly stood up. Who are you? And dared to break into this uncle's territory, looking for. Before the dragon's words were finished, he responded with a violent blow like a storm. Then, inside the manor, the sound of bang 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 kept ringing. At the same time, screams were heard one after another, spreading throughout the entire Kokoja village. Listening to the sound of the fighting, all the girls knew that the battle had started, and it would be over soon. Looking at the situation, it was estimated that within 3 minutes, those murlocs will all be wiped out. After the sweetheart is presented, he walks slowly, with a very confident look on his pretty face, and he is very optimistic about the strength of Lafitte and the others. Betty took a breath and said lightly, "Don't say 3 minutes, even a minute did not have to face the North Sea overlord by Guihai group last time, and it didn't take such a long time to deal with a mere 20 million Bailey's Murloc. That's not easy." Jia Mei turned to look at her sister. Her big eyes were very bright, and she said with a smile, "Nuo Qigao, did you hear that? The battle is fierce." "Ha ha, it's all the screams of the Murlocs, it can't be stopped at all, this is really a beautiful music festival. Call it even worse, ha ha ha." At this moment, Nami was really overjoyed. Without any image, she laughed and vented all the emotions in her heart. Going to the days of oppression, the scene of the mother's tragic death, the scene of the villagers being killed, all these old and new hatreds have come to an end at this time, and the sex curtain has completely fallen. 084, thank you, Chris Pirates, we will pray for you. Looks like you're doing the right thing. Hearing the sound of the fish people's repair, Nuo Chi's beautiful eyes lit up, her pretty face was full of joy, and she said excitedly, "It's great, now the villagers can finally live a good life." At this time, the girls had already arrived at the gate of the manor, only to see many villagers surrounding them. All of them had a look of horror on their faces. I didn't know what was going on inside. I was afraid that these fish people would be very sexual and rush out to kill them. Shall we go in and take a look? No, that's the fisherman's territory. Didn't you hear that you will be killed when you go in? These bastards are screaming. Did you meet any opponent? I'd like everyone to go home quickly, and wait for these wicked people. If we rush out, we won't be able to kill any of the Murlocs. I really want to fight with them." Suddenly, Ajian saw Nami and Nuochigao. Seeing that they were leading a group of strangers, he asked Nami and Nuochigao with a serious look, "Why did you bring strangers in? It's very dangerous, you will be hurt. Let them go." Dr. Ninggao is a doctor in the village and is usually very prestigious. He nodded and said, "Now there is a change in the manor, I don't know what the situation is. You little girls, hurry up and get out of here to avoid trouble." The villagers were very enthusiastic, nodded one by one, and persuaded them all. Feeling the enthusiasm and concern of the villagers, Meaty raised her eyebrows and smiled. She was very happy to say that everyone was doing well, really. Kind and honest. Karina nodded her head, turned her beautiful eyes, and said with a smile, "Only a good place like this can cultivate such excellent girls as Nami and Nuochigao." Nami looked at the villagers and stopped. I stepped down, Akimbo laughed, and I was very happy to tell everyone the good news. I just brought my helpers over, and they are all very strong. Did you hear the screams of the fish people? They were all killed one by one, and they can no longer oppress us. Nami held up her right hand, her big eyes were very bright, and said excitedly, "From now on, Kokoja village there are no Murlocs, everyone can live a good life." Nuo Qigao looked at the elders in front of him, and then said that Nami was right, the era of these bastard Murlocs has finally come to an end, and will no longer pose any threat to us, and all I want to thank them, that is, the Chris Pirates. Suddenly, the screams and fights in the manor stopped, and the air seemed to be quiet. Hearing what Nami and Nuochigao said, combined with the situation in the manor, the villagers looked at each other in dismay, wondering if they should believe what they said was the helper they invited to kill the evil Dragon Sea group, or whether they had already been killed by these. The fish people have wiped out the current possibility, and there are only these two. You two are so foolish. Ajien stared at Nami and Nuochigao, his expression still very serious, and reprimanded, "Even if you ask someone to come and help, at least discuss it with the village. If you don't say anything, you will pull people over. If something happens, isn't it harming others and harming yourself? You too." Ajien shook his head, sighed, and was really dissatisfied with the two of them. Doctor took a high look at them, wrinkled his gray shield hair, and asked, "Is the person you invited over really reliable? If we lose to these bastards, our village will be completely doomed." Reckless, the two of you are really too impulsive. Before you asked me to speak, the loud laughter from the manor interrupted Bashes, striding forward, came out, and shouted loudly. Said, "What is the highest reward in the East China Sea? It's just like garbage, ha 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 ha." Poison Q rode Stallone, and the Joker was ruthless and loud, but unfortunately there were too few Murlocs, or I could have poisoned more. The series proved that through this period of practice, I became stronger and stronger. Agent clenched his fists and said with determination, "But it's not enough, I have to become stronger, and I will swear to catch up with the captain's pace." The Murlocs inside have all been settled. Let's go back to the boat first. When you're done, leave as soon as possible. That's it. The villagers looked at each other with an unbelievable look on their faces. There were so many Murlocs in them. How could it be over so quickly? It's unbelievable. Thank you so much for your help. Nuo Chigao reacted and hurriedly faced Lafitte and the others. Grateful Nami blinked her beautiful big eyes, and said with a smile, "Although you asked me not to be so polite, I still really thank you very much." "Thank you very much." Luo carried the ghost to cry, and said coldly, "We are just completing the task given by the captain, the person you should thank is not us." After speaking, I went straight out of the town. I didn't want to waste time here. The other squad leaders were not interested in this village at all. Let's all follow and leave. Let's go in and see the so-called Murlocs. Then he left here. Betty has always been decisive, and walked directly into the manor, wanting to see what the sweetheart queen nodded, and said with a smile, "Since it's all down, why don't you go back without seeing the Murloc's face?" Nami looked at the villagers with a smile on her face. "Everyone, follow us in and have a look, and make sure that all the Murlocs have been killed." Hee hee. Nuochi nodded and said in agreement, "Everyone must want to see the tragic death of the fish people, let's go in together." Then, everyone stepped into the manor to see the battle just now. What was the situation like? When I entered my eyes, I saw that the manor had turned into ruins, the house collapsed, the ground subsided, and the trees were broken. The most important thing is that corpses can be seen everywhere on the ground. The copyright of the novel resources belongs to the original author, and the text is only for personal study and trial reading. Please delete it within 24 hours after downloading. Please support subscribing to Genuine Novels and refuse piracy. This novel was first published by Dragon. Feilu's novel internal group 1,142,529,731. More wonderful Feilu novels are in the hands of the group owner. Welcome to the group. The fish people were lying quietly, their bodies were covered with blood, dyeing the ground red, and they died very miserably. After that, it was very uncomfortable. Fighting hard. Betty took a breath and said lightly, "It seems that in order to complete Chris's explanation, they all made a ruthless move. This is a Murloc that looks a lot like a human. Can't say it's similar." Karina shrugged, and said with a look of disgust, "These Murlocs are so ugly and strange, and they make people unappetizing to see them." To the right of the countless Murloc corpses on the ground, Nami Stone grasped it, waved it in the air, and said with great excitement that it was over. "These guys are all dead. In the future, everyone will no longer have to be apologetic. I am so happy." Ha ha ha. Nuo Chigao covered her mouth, weeping, and water dripped from her beautiful eyes. Finally reported. I'm so happy." Stopping the two of them, the villagers all reacted at this time, and finally knew what was going on. Then, all the villagers screamed and screamed, all of them died of pain, all of them died, ha ha ha, damn Murloc, I want to avenge my father, and I have to stab it again when I die. May, Nuochigao, thank you, you saved everyone, I will always remember. No, we should thank the Chris Pirates, they are good people, thank you Chris Pirates, God bless you. My benefactor, Laoshan will set up a longevity card for you at home, and pray that God will bless the Chris Pirates, and let you go smoothly without disaster. Long live the Chris Pirates, you are a role model for all pirates. Up. 085. Report. There was an enemy attack, and the direction bird was destroyed. Kokoja village, on a hill outside. There is a tomb here, surrounded by green trees, shaded by grass, and the air is fresh. It is a very peaceful burial place. It's where Bellmeyer lives. At this time, there were 3 people standing silently in front of the grave. Nami, Nuo Chigao, and Ajien Name were holding flowers in their hands. Their beautiful eyes were looking at the tombstone. A happy look appeared on their pretty faces, and they said with a knowing smile, Nuo Chi and Igao is leaving. You heard it right, we are going to see the vastness of the world, to experience many things. Didn't you say that as a woman, you must always be strong, have confidence in life, and be enthusiastic? Now that we have done it, we are full of hope and full of anticipation for the end. After the adventure is over, Nuo Chigao and I will return to our hometown, and come back to you at that time to tell you the story of the 100 dangers, tilde. Nami's eyebrows were curved, her smile was pure and lovely, and she didn't say anything more. She squatted down, placed the flowers gently, stood up, walked to the side, and waited for Nuo Chigao to speak. Inside the manor, Nami persuaded Nuo Chigao to leave with her and go sailing together, but Nuo Chigao refused. She wanted to stay in Kokoja village at 060, and take care of Belmer's tomb. Kei Yuju and others followed and persuaded Nuo Chigao to join her. Leave, so that I have a company with Nami, and Nami will not be so useless. The most important thing is that Bakura followed suit. Her words are the most useful. She has her own lucky halo, and she can achieve everything she wants. So, what else can Nuo Chigao do? He can only get on the boat obediently and go to sea with him. Mother, Nami is right, we are all very strong now and full of hope for life. Nuo Chigao was also holding flowers, silently staring at Belmer on the tombstone, with a gratifying smile on his beautiful face. Now that the fish people are killed, the villagers can live a happy life. Everything is getting better and better, you don't have to worry about it in the sky. Mother, in a few years, Nami and I will end our adventure. When the time comes, we will tell you our story in detail every day. I believe you must be very interested, like listening. Mother, goodbye, we are leaving, you have to watch us well in the sky, bless us forever happy and healthy. After speaking, slowly squat down and gently put the flowers down. Ajien looked at the 2 of them with a serious look on his face. Master Jung said, you two, if you can't get along outside, remember to come back soon. Don't be wronged outside, still choose to die, refuse to go home and still have it. If you have time, come back to see your mother, she likes you to accompany the most. Ajien waved his hand and said impatiently, go, don't let the benefactors wait too long. Na whitened Ajien, and she is quite speechless to this elder who looks like her father. Don't look at Ajien being so serious all the time. He is a man who is cold on the outside and hot on the inside. He takes care of the 2 of them so much that he treats them as his own daughters. All right, let's go, you have to take care of yourself. Nami turned around, stepped forward, waved her back to Ajien, said goodbye to Ajien, looked up at Ajien, bowed, smiled and said, we're leaving, you must take care of it. After he finished speaking, he hurried to the front, catching up with Nami's figure. Ajien stood silently, staring silently at their leaving figures. A rare smile appeared on his serious face. Burmal, these 2 little boys the girl is going to see, they are all grown up, it's time to go out and experience something. Ajien turned to look at Belmer's photo and said with a slight smile, in the days to come, you will not be alone because I am here to accompany you, chatting and talking with you. You said that the 2 of them will you be happy in the future, I think for sure. A gust of wind blew, the leaves rustled, the grass was gently bundled, and the flowers on the ground swayed slightly, as if they were answering Ajien's question. The 2 of them will be happy. Above the crisp BBA. At this time, the big ship had already left the coast and headed for the deep sea. Special mother, every time a woman joins, can't you come with a handle, fuck. Bashes waved his palm, cultivated his arrogance, and cursed angrily. Poison Q leaned on the reclining chair and said with a smile, No way, the captain likes women too much. He can't walk when he sees beautiful women, and they all have to get on board. Jin sneered and said, Xiaochang knows how to cultivate, so why are you interested in women? Don't talk nonsense. Judging from his appearance, the captain is not someone who likes women's lust, there is no doubt about that. Hawkins is playing cards again, his voice is very low. Lafayette turned his cane and said politely, the captain has come to a beautiful woman, isn't it very good? Faced with you guys every day, life is so boring, I still have to have some beauty and seductiveness. The man in front of Nami in the training room blinked his eyes and said with a smile, Captain Chris, this is my sister, she wants to join us. Do you think it's okay? At this time, the boat has already left, and now I came to ask Chris, which is sure that he will agree. After all the girls have agreed on this matter, so Chris will definitely respect their opinions. Captain Chris, who will not object, hello, my name is Nuo Chigao, please take care of me in the future. Nuo Chigao stood tall and slender, and bowed to Chris, his tone was extremely sincere and Chris did not look back. Dai continued wielding a big knife, and said lightly, you can look at Gu Nuo Chigao, and said gently and generously, Chris is like this, he knows how to cultivate if he doesn't care about other things. So don't look at how he didn't say much, in fact, he was very warm to welcome you. Betty took a puff of cigarette, and then said, his way of welcoming is really different, you just get used to it. Karina's beautiful eyes are bright and prosperous. Jingdi said with a smile, Nuo Chigao, I was not used to it at first, but only later did I realize that Chris is actually such a character. Nuo Chigao, when I first got on the boat, Nai looked at her sister and laughed. At that time, I couldn't understand Chris's answer, and I don't know if he agreed or not. So, don't say these two words, it's already a lot. Nuo Chigao nodded lightly, smiled and said, it's alright, I can get used to it. Then, the girls started chatting, talking about the fish people just now, laughing constantly, very happy in a certain sea area in the East China Sea. There was an enemy attack, and the direction bird was destroyed. There was an enemy attack, and an urgent siren sounded above the bird viewing platform. 086, a few kilometers away, hit the direction bird, this is a sharpshooter. Inside the training room. Hearing the sound of reports coming from outside, the girls all froze for a moment and stopped chatting. What happened? How could there be an enemy attack? Karina looked at them, wrinkled her beautiful eyebrows, and her pretty face was full of doubts. The Queen Sweetheart shook her head and said with a puzzled look, since I got on the ship, I have never encountered an enemy attack. This is the first time this has happened. Betty took a breath, still so calm, in the other 3 seas, I haven't met a guy who dares to pick. I didn't expect to come to the weakest Donghai, but instead was threatened by someone. It's ridiculous. Perona is floating in the air, waving the elementary school head, and said aggressively, Jing Ran dares to destroy our direction bird, it is unforgivable. After a while, this princess will let her anger out, and see who dares to pick on us. Nami, to the right of them, the minister blinked his eyes, and said with great confusion, the direction bird is so small, it's incredible that it can be hit. Nuochi nodded and said in agreement, the person here must be a sharpshooter. There is only one possibility when Juyu holds her delicate chin in her hand and faces the man who is wielding the sword in front of her, smiling sweetly, gentle and pleasant. Chris, why don't you go out and have a look? Without answering, Chris waved the big knife again, then stood the blood red in front of him, and slowly closed his eyes to hide from seeing Chris like this. Nuo Chigao was very curious and couldn't help whispering, Chris, what are you doing? You don't seem to be thinking. I know. Rona flew around in the air and let out a laugh of silver bells. This is domineering and domineering. Didn't Chris do the same when I met Jin Hazy Daezang last time? Karina nodded and said with a smile, yes, last time I was the same as Nuo Chigao. I thought Chris was thinking about something. At this time, Chris opened his eyes, still so calm, go out to sea and put away the blood red, then took big steps and walked straight to the door. Hearing Chris say this, the girls immediately understood that the person who came here must be unusual and attracted his interest. Let's go out and have a look. How hard it must be to get Chris' attention first. He stroked his pale blonde hair, and said gently and generously, it is indeed very rare to be able to make this cultivator stop. Najiu looked at Baccarat and smiled lightly, it sounds very interesting. As long as Chris moves, it means that Wei's love is about to happen. This has become a theorem. Baccarat said with a smile, he has such a personality. Speaking of which, this is also the first time I have met. I have never seen similar people before. To be honest, I am very curious about Chris's childhood, but unfortunately he didn't say much at all. Betty took a breath with the word, cultivation. The sunglasses were pulled down slightly, and he continued, he must have been very unlovable when he was a child. It is a problem, there is no doubt about it. Karina blinked her beautiful eyes and smiled, when I was a child, I needed companions, so I was considered to be the last year. As for Chris, I feel that he grew up in a cross shape, so that's why all the girls talk and laugh. Discussing Chris' situation, slowly walked outside to the deck. Bassos has the most violent character. He stood up quickly, scowled with anger, and yelled at Mad, who dared to find fault with him. When Lao Su didn't kill him, he lay on the deck, smiled strangely, and said, it's really interesting. Jing Ran was picked by someone. The captain has lost his prestige. It's time to change people, hee. Agent put on a stance, punched with both fists, and the indifferent voice sounded. This is the Chris Pirates, and the captain can only be Lord Chris. If the captain is changed, the team will be disbanded. Therefore, anyone can be replaced, except for Captain Chris. Since getting on the boat, I have seen Chris' strength, heard him explain the cultivation of domineering, and other aspects. His respect for Chris has made him truly identify with this boat just like Lafitte. If he dared to say something to Chris, he would never allow Luo to cry while carrying the demon sword, looked up at the direction bird at the observation deck, and said coldly, the other party's marksmanship is really good enough. We haven't seen each other's silhouette yet, despite such a long distance, we can still hit the direction bird. There is no doubt that the person who comes here must be a very powerful sharpshooter. Frostkins flipped out a card, as always, like a dead man, and said whether he was a sharpshooter or not, since he fired this shot, he would definitely come to the door. Lafitte adjusted his top hat and said mildly, no matter who the opponent is, it is destined to be a new member of the ship, but we have no accurate marksmanship yet, and a crew member who is attacking from a long distance just happened to be here, so that more complete. Suddenly, the alarm sounded again from the observation deck. Found the target. The other party was on a small boat a few kilometers ahead. It was a young man. Discovering the target, the tone of the reporter, with a strong color of shock, was able to hit the direction bird a few kilometers away. This really shocked the alarm officer. It just so happened that as soon as the voice of the turtle reporter fell, it was over the shoulders that were added. It was Chris and the others who listened to the police officer, and all the girls were shocked. A few kilometers away, what kind of concept is this? It's scary to say no more. Nuo Ruauchi's Galmei's eyes widened, with a surprised look on her pretty face. She said in disbelief, how many kilometers, can one person see that far? Nidi shook her head gently, her fair face was full of emotion, and she said a few kilometers away, we probably won't be able to see this ship. As for the direction bird, let alone the shadows. Perona floated in the air and looked around. It was all white sea, and there was no shadow of ships. It's scary, it's really scary. The princess looked around and couldn't find half a shadow. This is really too far. The queen's sweetheart also looked at the sea level ahead, smiled and said, the siren saw it with a telescope and we don't have that, how can we see so far? Namiyu put her hands on her eyes and looked forward with all her strength, only to see a blue sea, nothing else. Was still a look of surprise on the beautiful face, and she said with a wry smile, in the East China Sea, there is such a powerful sharpshooter, this girl has never heard of it. It seems that, as Chris said, there are people outside people, there are days outside the world, the world is so big, what we see is actually just the tip of the iceberg. There are too many unknowns. Karina patted her on the shoulder, with slyness in her beautiful eyes. She joked. You are our navigator in the future of the sea. You must know the best. He 087. Dare to provoke our captain. I will never spare you, Van Oka. The captain is here. It seems that the young man is our new member, Bashes. He raised his arms and said with a big laugh, this time I have a handle, so I can have a good fight. Wei Haha sat up. With a mysterious smile, I'll let him try the miasma, and hope he won't be poisoned. Since he appeared in our sight, his fate has been doomed. Hawkins is playing cards, as always, calm, and his voice has no waves. Luo hugged the ghost and cried, with a rare look of anticipation on his icy face, I really want to see how strong this guy is. Akin looked at Chris with an ugly smile and said, Captain, I have become more and more familiar with the domineering of armed colors, and I believe that I will be able to learn it soon. At this time, the distance between the two sides kept getting closer. Lafitte looked at the sea level in front of him, smiled slightly, and said something about this guy's dress, which is a bit interesting. Wearing a strange hat and wearing a blindfold on his right eye, there is another problem on the right side. Lafayette turned his cane and said, but then again, looking at the way he is carrying a gun, how many 11 are there? Distracted sharpshooter look. Nami has the boat in front of her, and her smile is pure and sweet. This guy's strength is definitely not bad. Otherwise, how dare you float on the sea alone? Nuauchi nodded and said with a wry smile, everything else is fine, but this dress is too weird, right? Karina patted her shoulder, turned her beautiful eyes, and said with a smile, before Chris I said something that makes sense. Corona floated to Karina's side with a curious look on her face, and said quickly, what are you talking about? Powerful people often have weird personalities, and they can't look at Karina with a normal person's eyes. Looking at the others, he smiled and said, I'm not wrong, I remember Chris Zhu said this about the Sweetheart Queen. Nodding his head, he smiled and said, I said such a sentence. I also have the impression that many of what Chris said are quite reasonable. Among them, I like the world he said most, and the strong are respected. If you can kill me, then you are stronger than me. It is my honor to be killed by the strong, what more can I say? All the girls in the training room have basically heard this sentence, so it is not surprising, but for Lafitte and others, it is completely different. They are hearing this for the first time. One by one was blown away. As expected of the captain, what he said makes sense. Bashes laughed loudly and said loudly, yes, if anyone can kill Lao Su, then what can Lao Su say about his weakness? Go to pray to the other party to spare him. How could the enemy agree? Wei ha 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 ha. Poison Q leaned on the chair and laughed. The captain is very partial. These words are not said to us. It is obviously treated differently. Luo looked at Chris, nodded, and said lightly, it's like our boat rules. Everything that pays attention to strength is slaughtered by the strong, and it's really no one's fault. Bai, who called you so weak? A look of admiration, Jin said to Chris, Captain, what you said is too good. I will keep in mind that efforts become stronger. The vice captain of this ship can only be me, the ghost agent. Lafitte stood his cane in front of him with a suave expression. Very good, Akin. You are an ambitious man. I admire you very much. I hope you will challenge me as soon as possible. At this time, the boat in front has come to the Chris. Is a fork in fate. Fan, Ka carried the love gun Chinlu, with a slender face, expressionless, and said indifferently, my name is Fan Oka, born in the East China Sea, and I am a gunman. I would like to join your team. I wonder if it is possible, Captain Chris. Hearing the young man's words, except for Chris, everyone else was stunned and hit the direction bird on the boat from a long distance, then ran over and said they wanted to join the team. Is there such a person? Do you take it for granted? Long lead, this guy is too self-righteous, let me poison him. Poison Q looked at Fan Oka. Kang's face showed a strange smile, and his eyes chose a sinister color. Bashes raised his arms high, laughed and said, yes, He dared to hit the directional bird on the boat. He is going to dismount waiting for us. Who does he think he is? Let Lao Su kill him. Wei ha 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 ha. Lua looked at Basas, and said coldly, the opponent's spear skills are so strong. You will be directly headshot. Lilkins playing cards, looked at Van Oka on the boat, and said in a low voice, Basas is not his opponent from the looks of it. Lafitte turned his cane and said humbly, didn't the captain say it before? It's normal for powerful people to have weird personalities. Since Van Oka has the ability to hit the directional bird, it is acceptable for him to be arrogant. At this moment, Chris put his arms around him, looked at Van Oka indifferently, and said calmly, Xiao Fan. Oka nodded slightly, a rare smile appeared on his serious face. Captain, I have been waiting. Showing up with people like you. Then, the tall body jumped directly onto the Chris. Quietly stood on the side, kept silent, and didn't say hello to other people. He looked very calm. When everyone saw him like this, they knew that this person was withdrawn, and he definitely didn't like to talk. Another problem came from the crew. Karina looked at the girls, shrugged her shoulders, and her pretty face was full of unaccompanied expressions. Perona floated in the air, nodded her little head, and said dissatisfiedly, it's strange to dress up, even with such a bad personality. The princess didn't like it very much. 953 Nuauchigao looked at them and said with a sweet smile, in Chris's words, strong strength, these are all acceptable. After all, no one is perfect, strength is the most important. At this time, Bashes glared at Fan Oka viciously, and said angrily, you guy makes me very upset, wait for the battle for squad leader to start later. If I don't beat you up, I won't be called Basas. Ajin nodded with an indifferent expression, and agreed, although you have joined the team now, I will not forget your provocative behavior. This is the Chris Pirates, the strongest existence in the world, and they are never allowed to be picked. The captain must always maintain his majesty, only in this way can he be convincing. Ajin looked at Fan Yauka, his eyes were fierce, and he smiled cruelly and said, when my strength improves, I will definitely ask you to settle today's account. I will never allow anyone to provoke Captain Chris. Poison Q leaned back in the chair, smiled weirdly and said, young man, now you've troubled the nigger Ajin, but he's a ruthless man. It will be very troublesome if he is targeted. But you should be lucky, I decided not to do anything to you, or you will die worse, Hei Ming. 088. Weird, Van Oka brings a very mysterious news. From the looks of it, you are not his opponent. Hawkins looked at Akin, still like a dead man, and said calmly. Lafitte stood his cane in front of him, holding Fan Yauka, and said politely, Fan Yauka, I want to ask you to know the name of our Chris Pirates, so I found it specially, is that right? Fan Yauka didn't take the threat of them seriously at all. Looking at Lafitte, his expression was as cold as ever. No, I came out to find the mysterious ship, and I didn't do it on purpose. I can only say that fate made us meet. At this time, Chris rarely went to practice. He wrapped his arms around him and silently looked at the sea level in front of him, not knowing what he was thinking. When the girls saw that Chris had no plans to leave, they stayed here too. When they heard Fan Oka said this, and they immediately became interested, and quickly asked Karina about new things. Interested, turned to Maichu, and asked with a curious smile on her pretty face. That, Fan Yiyuka, the mysterious ship you mentioned, what do you mean? It sounds like it's very powerful. Perona flew around in the air, let out a silvery laughter, and said with a smile, it's very interesting to listen to, this princess likes listening to it the most, ha 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 tilde. Nuauchi looked at Tsunami, frowned her beautiful eyebrows, and asked suspiciously, is there such a ship here in the East China Sea? Nami blinked her eyes, thought for a moment, and shook her head, I've never heard of it. Where is there a mysterious ship? I've never heard of it at all. It seems to be amazing, what kind of ship is so mysterious? The sweet queen's pale eyelids showed a look of anticipation, and she wanted to know the answer. Fan Yauka stood quietly, didn't say a word, and didn't pay any attention to these women's questions. For him, women are a kind of trouble. He doesn't like to deal with women, even if he is a crew member in the future, it is the same. Seeing Fan-oka like this, the girls gritted their silver teeth angrily and glared at him fiercely. I've never seen such a nasty guy. Mad. Jen can't scold him a few words to vent his dissatisfaction. Fan-oka still ignored the murderous eyes of these beauties, and tapped the pistol on his shoulder with a calm expression. It's very good. I suddenly found out that you are quite a man of my appetite. Bosses patted Fan-oka's shoulder hard, laughed and joked. It's good, very man, wait. In the future, the battle for the squad leader will start, and I will not hit you. Wei ha ha ha. Gao Q nodded, his smile was still so mysterious, and he continued, that's it, ignore women, when they don't exist, hey. Jin frowned, looked indifferent, and said, you are really good at this, but I still won't forgive you. For those who provoke the captain, they must be severely punished once, which is not negotiable. Luo looked at Hawkins and said in a cold tone, we all seem to be very disinterested in women. Rykins nodded and replied in a low voice, everyone is cruel, so they won't be caught by women. Lafayette stood his cane in front of him and said gently, although I don't like women, I definitely won't. Acting so cold. At this time, Baccarat looked at Chris, folded her crimson hair, curled her eyebrows, and smiled gently at Chris. I felt that luck had come again. Naiju blinked and said with a sweet smile, it seems that the ship that Fan-oka said is really weird. The sweetheart queen nodded and agreed, since Baccarat feels it, that is to say, this ship is real. Rona floated in the air, her face wrinkled, and she said dissatisfiedly, anyway, this princess won't ask me anymore, Right, I won't ask again, what is bullshit? Karina withdrew her mouth, with a disdainful expression on her beautiful white eyelids. Nami looked at Baccarat, her beautiful eyes lit up, and she showed full interest, this is the luck of Sister Baccarat, it's amazing. Nuauchi nodded and said, it's the first time I feel this kind of ability, it's really strange. Chris hasn't said anything yet. Bassos and the others can't help it. Although they don't like women, they are very confident in what Baccarat said, because every time Baccarat said something, in the end, Fan-oka was achieved. Let's talk about it. What is that mysterious show? What is going on? Bassos looked at him and said quickly, Baccarat is a lucky fruit person, and every time he can bring good luck, this time is no exception. So, stop the ink, and say something. Poison Q nodded, showing a rare serious expression, and agreed. Others can be doubted, but for her fruit ability, she must choose to believe that Lafitte also looked at Fan-oka, and said very gentleman, since Baccarat said so, it means that good luck has come. Yauka, let's talk about it. If you don't say it this time, it will definitely not work. Fan-oka glanced at Baccarat lightly, with a rare expression of surprise on her serious eyelids. A person with such abilities is quite shocking, but that's fine. It seems that joining the Chris Pirates is really an arrangement of fate. Fan-oka habitually tapped the gun on his shoulder, and said calmly, there is a story circulating in my village. Hundreds of years ago, there was an old fisherman in the village who went out to sea to fish, and he accidentally came across a very sour boat. The shape of the amine boat is very strange, like a big black fish. It is very strange. The most important thing is that the amine boat has no sails at all, but it sails very fast. Fan-oka said in a calm tone, in the words of an old fisherman. Since he started fishing, he has never seen such a fast boat. After the old fisherman came back, he told the people in the village about this strange situation, and the villagers remembered it from now on. But time will make people forget a lot of things. Later, the villagers all forgot about this matter. It was not until 100 years ago, when my ancestors, Jiao Nuos, went to sea to do business, that they found the magical ship Fan-oka again. Ka's tone changed, Beryllium frowned, and said in confusion, but this time, the discovery of this black ship made my ancestors feel shocked. There was no human figure on it, but my ancestors were very curious and wanted to follow. But it was quickly used, and I can no longer find the shadow of the ship. 10 years ago, I was still blowing wind on the coast, and I found the trace of this ship by accident. I used a telescope to look at it, and the bad ship was indeed no one was operating, but the speed was astonishingly fast, and it disappeared in a blink of an eye. Fanyauka tapped his shoulder again with a gun, and said calmly, "Just now, I was out looking for the trail of the collapsed ship, and then I met your donkey." 089. 1 month later, start the battle for the squad leader. Everyone fell silent. Everyone is digesting the shocking news of Van Oka. The ship, which no one controls, is sailing so fast that it is impossible to catch up. What's happening here? Completely incomprehensible. Amazing, so mysterious. Karina was the first to react, with a look of surprise on her beautiful and fair face, and murmured, "In this world, there are such strange creatures. It's really unheard of, so unbelievable tilde." Perona floated in the air, her little head twitched frequently, her pretty face was full of anticipation. She smiled and said, "Interesting, it's really fun. Look, you must find this ship, there must be a secret inside." Holly Haley Nuauchigao shook his head gently, and said in awe, "It sounds really weird, what is this like?" Nami's small hands were tightly clasped, her beautiful eyes were shining, and she said with a smile, "Treasure, there must be a shocking treasure on this ship." Needy looked at them, stroked her pale blonde hair, and smiled wryly. "Listening to this story, how could I have a feeling of cold legs? It's too regressive and mysterious." Queen Sweetheart shrugged her shoulders and said helplessly, "Who said no? Huju is full of gloomy flavors. These women are curious about this kind of thing, and even a little afraid that it will be different for those big men." At first, they were also surprised and curious. But after calming down, one by one suddenly lost interest and thought it was a good thing. "Isn't it just a boat? What's the big deal?" Basas smiled disdainfully, and he didn't care about this matter at all. Asking Jin nodded, and said indifferently, "Even if there is anything strange in it, it's just a ship and it's not worth discussing at all." Luo carried the ghost and cried, "Still so cold, there are too many strange things in the sea, there is really nothing to be surprised about." "Can't say that." Lafitte put the cane in front of him, moved to the left, and said mildly, "If you can find it, of course you have to take a good look at it. If you can't touch the fruit, that's no big deal. After all, treasure is not very attractive to us at all." At this time, Chris wrapped his arms around him and said calmly, "Spin around in the East China Sea for a few more days. I've already lost some time here." Chris doesn't want to stay any longer. He turned around and went to the training room. The girls saw that Chris had left, and none of them wanted to stay here. They followed behind Chris, talking and laughing. "I have been practicing for a long time, and I will hurry up too." Jinyu glanced at Chris back, his dark eyelids showed a resolute look, and walked straight up to the outside, and began to refine. Basas patted Fanyauka on the shoulder and said with a big laugh, "Speaking of which, although you are a little bit open, you hit the direction bird on the boat. But this gun is really powerful. I have grown so big, and I have never seen a gunman who is more powerful than you, Wei ha ha ha." Poison Q was lying on the chair with a weird smile. "What is so powerful? He who is born in the East China Sea has never even heard of the arrogance of the color." Luo glanced at Fanyauka, and said lightly, "If he can be armed with domineering, armed with bullets, then you, a natural ability person, will surely die." After he finished speaking, he was too lazy to pay attention to them, and went to the side to practice. Hawkins put away the cards and said in a deep voice, "He who is not domineering, no matter how accurate his marksmanship is, it is not too strong to walk to the side," and said calmly, "If he learns to be domineering and cooperate with spear skills, his strength must be extremely strong and domineering." He was taken aback by what they said. Fanyauka didn't know what he meant. At this time, there was only Lafitte here, and he could only ask about the serious face of the little white man dressed in the play, with a rare curious look on his face. Asked doubtfully, "Domineering, what is this?" "This will be discussed later. If a new person joins, you have to go through the program first." Lafitte turned his cane, smiled and said, "Van Oka, welcome to join the Chris Pirates. I'm the vice captain of this regiment, Lafitte." Just as Lafitte was about to continue the line, he heard the roar of Bassos. "Lafitte, can you stop bragging about your vice captain all the time?" I can't even hear Bassos looking at Lafitte, so I said helplessly, "Every time a new person joins, you emphasize that one, you isn't it annoying?" Poison Q was lying on the chair. The Joker was still so weird. Let him show off. His good days are not long. I am more and more interested in the development of Chi Fruit. Ming Xiao, the position of deputy captain, foot belongs to me. Luo looked at Hawkins, and said coldly, "I think we should show it. I plan to fight with them." Hawkins is cultivating the domineering. Without answering him, he turned his head to look at Lafitte, crying with a demon knife in his arms, and said coldly, "Lafitte, there are more and more crew members now. I suggest that after a month, start the battle for the squad leader. After all, the number of people is too large, and the name must be determined." As soon as Bassos heard this, he immediately came to Xingqiao and laughed well. It was really time to start a fight. But a month is too long. I think it will start tomorrow. The blood in my body is already burning. Wei ha ha ha. Poison Q looked at him, shook his head, and directly objected. He coughed and said, "No, I still need my fruit. Continue to develop, have to wait." Ajin Shuangshe kept hitting, with a mighty imposing manner, followed by saying that I agree with Trafalgar and Wan Luo, 1 month is the most suitable. After a month, my strength will definitely increase greatly. At least I can get 3 months from the captain of the 3rd Division. The position of deputy captain definitely belongs to me. 090, the captain said that in a month, he will watch the battle in person. I also recommend starting after a month. Hawkins said calmly and in a low voice, "By Wan, after a month, we have entered the Great Waterway, and it is indeed time to determine the order." Listening to their conversation, Fan Yaoka didn't understand at all, and said calmly, "The battle for the squad leader, this is what the hell is going on. You know the Chris Pirates, so why don't you know the rules on our ships?" Lafitte stood his cane in front of him, and did not rush to answer Luo's question, but asked Fan Yao first. After all, this is a newcomer who has just boarded the ship. As the deputy captain, he must take great care of him. Card chills. Knowing your Chris Hazang group, it was learned through the reward order. Fan Yaoka, the existence with the highest reward for the first time in the world, tapped a gun on the shoulder and said lightly, "As for the rules of the ship, the newspapers did not explain it." Chifei Te turned his cane and smiled gently, "Ajin, tell him about the rules of our ship. Go to the training room, turn your back to them and say, for such a big matter, you still have to ask the captain, although he can fight. There is no way to fight against the captain's cultivation." Bassos shrugged his shoulders and sneered, "Tell the captain that it's a shit, will he care about this? The captain will not care about the battle below, except for 12 cultivation, do you think? Too much, Lafitte." Poison Q smiled mysteriously, and said in a weak voice, 1 month is enough for me to improve my strength. After waiting for so long, the position of deputy captain finally belongs to me, ahem. Although Akin wanted to replace Lafitte, he still respected him very much. He stopped practicing, looked at Fan Oka, and began to explain. "There is only one rule on our ship, speak with a learner. Here, there are 3 cases." Inside the training room, Karina was still very angry, her pretty face was full of anger, and she said angrily, "This Fan Oka is really too flattering. This girl has never seen such a disgusting person before." She really wanted to hit him. Humph Corona was floating in the air, nodding her head in dissatisfaction. This princess won't talk to him in the future, and this princess also hates this people. Jimei patted Karina's shoulder. The big-eyed minister blinked, and said jokingly, "If you want to beat him, the key is that you can't beat him with such good spear skills. How can you be his opponent?" Nuauchi is wrinkled and good-looking. He raised his eyebrows and smiled bitterly. Strength can really change a person, and none of the people on board are normal. Needy waved her jade hand slightly, smiled and said, "Okay, since you don't like him, then don't mention him." In this way, everyone's mood will not be affected. Sweetheart Queen Chunsei and the others, with bright eyes, said with interest, "Let's talk about that magical ship. The more I think about it now, the more incredible." You said, "How did the unmanned ship move forward?" The sweet queen showed a hint of horror on her pretty face, and murmured, "Is there any terrifying undead on it? The ghosts are still lingering." Betty rolled her eyes at her, took a puff of cigarette and said, "During the day, I started to dream. I don't believe it, such things as undead and dead people are all hilarious." Zhu Erlang's legs were upturned, and the jade hand held the fair chin, and said with great interest, "It started to spread hundreds of years ago. I was thinking, how can a ship's lifespan last so long? Even with the best wood in the world, the treasure tree atom, can't float on the sea like this. There must be something wrong here, it's really mysterious." Baccarat folded her crimson hair. Mei Mei looked at Lei Ju. The two of them have very similar personalities. They are both gentle ladies, so they can chat very easily. "Don't be curious, my intuition tells me that it won't be long before we can find the mysterious ship, and then we can study it carefully to see what is wrong." With a shallow smile, he said generously, "Since you said so, then this ship is destined to be unable to run knock knock knock." There was a knock on the door, and at the same time Lafitte's voice came. "Captain, I want to report something to you." Chris was doing a handstand with one hand, and said calmly, "The girls stopped talking when I came in, and I'm a little curious. Fet this guy. In addition to delivering newspapers, it was the first time I came in to report things. This makes the girls feel incredible." With a creak, the wooden door slowly opened. Lafitte stood at the door with his cane in front of him. He was still so polite as the captain. "We discussed it just now, and we plan to start the battle for the squad leader in a month. Can you see that, Captain?" Hearing Lafitte's words, all the girls were stunned for a moment, and the face-to-face battle is about to start. Queen Sweetheart clapped her hands, raised her eyebrows, and said with a smile, "After waiting for so long, it's finally about to start. I'm really looking forward to it. I really want to know the order of the squad leaders." Betty took a cigarette and said lightly. He said, "These guys have endured for so long, and finally showed their fangs." Perona flew around in the air and let out a laughter of silver bells, and said very happily, "This princess has also waited for a long time, and I like to watch Lei the most." The captain was fighting. Holly Karina blinked her beautiful eyes, her eyes were cunning, and said excitedly, "This is very interesting, let's fight, let's make the storm more violent." At this time, Chris was doing a handstand, and a faint voice came over, "And I would watch for yourself." Shocked. Not only the girls, even Lafayette was stunned by who Chris was. They all knew very well. Where would you care about this kind of thing? Where would you be willing to waste this time? It was Lafitte who reacted first, turned his cane, smiled, and the gentleman said, "This is good news. Captain, I will explain it to them. Everyone must be very happy." After speaking, he walked out, closed the door and left. Queen Sweetheart looked at the girls and couldn't help but let out a strange cry. "Oh, it's easy. This cultivator is actually willing to watch the battle." This 370 makes Betty spit out the smoke a little, and as always indifferently, said, "It's an unprecedented thing." Zhu lightly nodded his head and smiled sweetly, "It's a bit surprising indeed. I can't believe Bai Jing, we are all used to this guy's indifference and don't care about anything. It's really unacceptable to suddenly come out like this." Nuauchi looked at them high, and said with a wry smile, "Actually, I don't understand, why should the crew be killed in this battle? It always feels bad. After all, everyone is a team, and holding this kind of battle will make the team lack cohesion." Mei nodded and smiled sweetly, "I don't agree with this either, but since Chris has made such a decision, there's nothing you can do." Perona floated to Nuauchigao's side with a smug little face, and said with a smile, "We didn't understand your question before, and then we asked Chris. We are sea robbers, no matter what the rules are, speaking with fists is the kingly way. If you want to follow the rules, then what kind of pirates are you? Just go home and farm. Perona looked at Queen Sweetheart, Baccarat and other old people, and said with a smile, I remember Chris seemed to have said that, right, ha 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 Hully. 091. Violet's figure tops the entire Dressrosa. Said something like this. Betty took a breath and said lightly. Looking at the figure of Chris, his eyebrows were curved, and he smiled and said, our captain can always speak amazingly. Baccarat nodded, looked at the evil nightmare fruit illustration, smiled slightly, and said casually, his ideological awareness is the highest in the whole ship. It's just that his personality is too calm and rational, and he doesn't like to talk, so it's hard for us to hear these contents. Karina touched her white chin, with a look of memory on her pretty face, and said with a smile, I think it's pretty good to have a sentence of anger without strength is meaningless. Needy looked at them, blinked her beautiful eyes, and said jokingly, what Chris said, some of them are very good, they can be made into a quotation. Hee hee. Hearing what she said, all the girls nodded in unison, and said in unison, this is possible, ha 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 on the deck. Funny, this boat really suits me best. Fanyika acted habitually, tapped his shoulder with a gun, and said lightly, this is fate. Just now, Agent has already told him the rules of the ship, including the next plan, regardless of domineering knowledge. Which one made Fan 547 Oka extremely shocked. His serious face showed surprise several times. There is still a lot of room for improvement in your strength. When you learn to be aggressive and domineering, Poison Q is definitely not for you. Jin Canyon Fan, Oka said indifferently, as you are now, no matter how good your marksmanship is, if you encounter the enemy of nature, you will definitely be killed. Okay, I have said everything that needs to be said. As for the cultivation of domineering, after finishing what the captain will teach you later, ignore him and walk directly to the side to start practicing poison. Fiercely, with a cruel smile, he said, you are right, I don't like listening to it. Believe it or not, I will poison you directly, Ghost Agent. At this moment, the sound of footsteps came, and at the same time, a cheerful voice sounded to tell everyone good news. Lafayette carried his cane, smiled and said, the captain said, he will personally watch the battle in a month's time, and all the ministries stopped what they were doing and hurriedly looked at him. There was a look of surprise on every face in the past. I can't believe it at all. The captain is going to watch the battle, which is great news. Bassos was the first to react, raised his arms and laughed, I will show the captain what a real martial artist is, way ha 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 ha. Luo carried the ghost cry and said calmly as always, it seems that the captain attaches great importance to this battle, otherwise, he is such a busy person, it is impossible to waste this time. Hawkins nodded, deadly, no. Unexpectedly, the result of this battle will be fixed for a long time. In the next few years, the order of the squad leaders will not change. Poison Q looked at Lafitte, smiled strangely and said, just right, let the captain witness. Jin, who became the deputy captain, was very excited, his tone was full of joy, and he quickly said, cultivation, I must work hard to cultivate in front of the captain and become the top 3 squad captains, this is a supreme honor. After he finished speaking, he didn't care about anything, and devoted himself to the practice. Fan. As soon as the Oka pistol was released, it quickly opened to the sky. With a bang, he hit a seagull, and said lightly, is it enough for me to improve my strength in a month? Even if I can't be a deputy captain, I will at least rank in the top 2. Lafitte looked at the people below and said with a slight smile, at that time, the whole ship will witness the arrival of this moment. It is very sacred, I really look forward to it. Seeing that the squad leaders stopped talking, the crew couldn't bear it any longer. They yelled and said who they supported. BCCD, Mr. Lafitte, apart from the captain, I admire you the most. The position of the deputy captain must belong to you, ha ha ha. Fan Yauka is the best. Haven't you seen his spear skills? You don't need to look at anything. He can kill a seabird with one shot. It's so powerful. Lala. Mr. Bashes is the most manly. I have been learning his laugh lately, way ha ha ha. Are you stupid? What's so good about laughter? Or what Lord Hawkins said is the best? Judging from your appearance, you are destined to be a child, ah. I'm so excited, no, I'm going to pee my pants, let's go. New World, Dressrosa, Flower Field. The revolutionary army of King Liku is located here. At this time, in a simple and plain room, there were 3 people, 2 women and 1 man, Violet, Becca, and King Liku. Violet, didn't I tell you? I don't want to meet you. King Riku looked at Hajime with a serious look on his old face, and said solemnly, if Doflamingo finds out, then I'll be sure at that time. You'll be suspicious of him, and you're in danger, understand? Rebecca sat upright, with her body slightly to one side, with a graceful and luxurious temperament, graceful in her demure, and her voice was clear and sweet. Grandpa, since Auntie came to us, there must be something to discuss, showing full. The princess of the country is indeed well deserved. With this figure, I'm the best father Dressrosa, do you think I'm someone who will mess up? Violet rolled his eyes at him, full of the style of the little daughter, which made her look really charming. Immediately afterwards, he turned to look at Rebecca, shook his head gently, and said with a wry smile, your words make my aunt very ashamed. If the aunt was really that powerful, she would have solved the bastard Doflamingo long ago, and let the people live a happy life long ago. Where is it like now? I can only hide in the underground world of Huation, living a dark and cold life. 092, The Shock of Rebecca and King Riku. Well, other digressions will be discussed later. King Riku knocked on the desk and looked at Wei. Light said in a deep voice, tell me, what exactly are the 2 of us here for? When Becca didn't speak, her beautiful eyes stared at Violet, and her eyes were concealed, and her beautiful and delicate face showed what a beautiful person. Speaking of business, Violet immediately cheered up, sat upright, and handed the stack of documents on the desk to King Liku and Rebecca. Mother, what is this? Habakkuk took the information handed by Violet, her eyes were flowing, her smile was fresh and elegant, she asked the Chris pirates out of curiosity. King Liku glanced at the information, then turned his attention to Violette, and asked suspiciously, you won't gather everyone together just because of this pirate group, Violette? Violet nodded lightly, with a straight expression on her pretty face, and said solemnly, I will tell you the cause and effect in detail now. Some time ago, Doflamingo went to hunt down Trafalgar. Luo originally found him, and almost caught him, but at this moment, the Chris pirates appeared and rescued Trafalgar one Luo. The Chris pirates, as the name suggests, the captain is Chris Violet, stroking the black hair in front of his forehead, and said with a slight smile, just a few days ago, the Chris Highway group was offered a reward, which shocked the whole sea. This young man has not yet entered the Great Waterway, and the bounty has reached 100 million Bailey. Moreover, many of his men's bounties are tens of millions of Baileys. If you count Chris, then the bounty of this pirate group exceeds 400 million Bailey. Hearing Wei Wright say this, Rebecca's beautiful eyes lit up, and her pretty eyes were full of surprise, and she muttered that in the 4 seas, the bounty can reach 100 million, I have never heard of it. This young man named Chris looks very mysterious. King Liku frowned, he was also shocked. I have lived for dozens of years, and I have seen strong winds and waves, but I have never heard of such a thing. At this moment, he couldn't help being curious about Chris. He didn't say much, opened the information, and read it carefully. Yes, this young man is really shocking. Violet shook his head gently, a look of emotion on his beautiful and delicate eyelids. Doflamingo wants to kill Trafalgar Row, he will definitely not stop. As a result, a conflict with Chris will naturally break out, and a fight is inevitable. Regarding this battle, Doflamingo mentioned it a few days ago. He used all his abilities. Even if the Overlord arrogance was activated, he couldn't kiss Chris. Violet turned to the 2 of them to the right, smiled and said, in the end, Doflamingo was told that he could only use his ultimate move, but he didn't use it and left directly. But from what I know about Doflamingo, he will never give up on anything he does. This bastard is unscrupulous. If he can kill Chris, he will never let it go. This is inevitable. Peek, this guy is two-faced saving to allow anything humiliating to happen. So, about this battle, there is only one result. Doflamingo is not Chris' opponent. He is afraid of Chris, so he dare not shoot again. Now, King Liku can no longer be calm. Dad is full of shock. Who is Doflamingo? He is such a powerful person, but it is not this Chris. His opponent really shocked him. Violet, what you say is true. King Liku looked at her with a surprised expression on his face, and said in disbelief, he is a young man, can he defeat Brother Doflamingo? Impossible, you must have heard rumors, this is definitely fake news. Becca frowned her beautiful eyebrows, and her pretty face was full of confusion. Feitong raised her aunt, what you said shocked me. However, this should not be possible, is there a problem with the news? Rebecca held Violette, smiled sweetly and said, I know that my aunt is reliable, and I will definitely not tell us anything that has not been confirmed. But this is really unbelievable. I feel like this is impossible to happen. Auntie, I probably looked at the information just now. This Chris is very young, about 19 years old. Shaking his head lightly, he said with a wry smile, even if he started cultivating since he was a child, he would still be able to practice for a few years. Brother Doflamingo is about 38 years old, twice as old as Chris, and he knows how much more time he has cultivated. In this way, Chris is definitely not Doflamingo's opponent. The gap between their strengths is still very large. Becca stroked her long pink hair, smiled sweetly and cutely, and continued, although he offers a very scary bounty, it doesn't represent his strength at all. Perhaps the Navy thought he was too threatening, or had a lot of potential, so he deliberately inflated his bounty, which is also possible. In short, I personally think that he is definitely not Doflamingo's opponent. King Liku took the words of his granddaughter, looked at Violet, and said solemnly, Becca is right, the strength of this young man should be very good. But facing the bastard Doflamingo, Chris is still not enough to see. How could he transport Doflamingo to that point? So, Violet, the news you got is unbelievable. There is no factual basis for King Liku and Xiao Becca to refute him. Violet is not surprised, but feels normal. After all, Chris is so young. If someone told her about this, her first reaction would be, certainly will not believe it. In fact, at the beginning, I also doubted that it was impossible. Violet looked at the two of them and said solemnly, however, I often hear Doflamingo mention Chris during this time. And every time I mentioned that, although he was very aggressive and domineering, I still found a trace of fear in his eyes. Just yesterday, Doflamingo mentioned Chris again, when I happened to be hiding outside the palace. You know my fruit power to wear all lies. At that moment, I read Doflamingo's inner thoughts. Violet's beautiful eyes were sparkling, and her beautiful face showed an extremely excited look, and quickly said that damn brat, how could such a monster appear in the sea? Even I am not his opponent to see his Shen Luo Tianzheng, is simply an absolute defense, with my unique trick 16 holy murder bullets to kill one god, it is impossible to break his defense. Where the hell did this kid come from? I sent people to search for it several times, but I couldn't find any news. It's mysterious enough. But he wants to work with me, which is definitely a good thing. If an alliance is formed, I won't have to be so afraid of Kaido's bastard in the future, foo. Violet gently brushed the black hair on his forehead aside, and said with a smile, it was only after this peeping that I was absolutely certain of a fact. Doflamingo is no match for Chris at all. 093. Contact Chris and let him save Dressrosa. Very shocked. In the room, there was no sound. There was no sound of Becca and King Liku. It was truly shocked. The two of them, very well aware of Violet's abilities. Superman is a staring fruit. As long as the target is within her line of sight, her inner thoughts will be read instantly. It is an artifact to discover secrets. If that's the case, Su Flamenco is really not Chris' opponent. King Liku shook his head. The vicissitudes of life were covered in horror, and he murmured, but this is too surprising. Chris, such a young kid, has such terrifying strength. How did he do it? This is really incredible. And Becca looked at Violette, her flawless face, with a surprised expression on her face, and quickly said, May 93, he is so young, yet his strength is so powerful, it can only show that his cultivation talent must be very strong. Very powerful. Moreover, he must be a very hard worker. Otherwise, it is absolutely terrifying that he cannot do it with his excellent crown. This young man is really terrible. Nebeka blinked her beautiful eyes, and her pretty face had a very curious look, and said with longing, I really want to meet such a young man. It's so different, I've never heard of such an outstanding young man. Violet looked at Becca, raised her eyebrows, smiled, and laughed. Oh, our beautiful Rebecca, Wanran is tempted by a man, this is a rare thing. Zizzo, I really envy Chris, to be able to get the favor of such a peerless beauty, it makes people envious. Luan Becca rolled her eyes at her, and said angrily, Auntie, you will take me away, what kind of him is he? His personality, whether he is easy to talk, I don't know, how could I be tempted by him? I understand. Auntie, I think you only fell in love with him. I guessed right, Dai, you are looking for information again, and you know him so well, there is nothing tricky to say here, but I don't believe it. King Liku knocked on the acid desk, coughed and reminded. He looked at Violet and asked suspiciously, Chris is stronger than Doflamingo, but what does this have to do with us? Do you want to use Chris's power to bring down Doflamingo, is that so? Hearing King Liku's remarks, Rebecca's beauty card flashed, and she looked at Violet curiously, an unbelievable model aunt, you wouldn't really be like what Grandpa said. Please Chris help us get rid of the Don Quixote family. If so, would it be dangerous? Becca shook her head lightly, frowned her slender willow eyebrows, and said solemnly, if he doesn't help us, he will tell Doflamingo about it. Then you are in trouble, sister, Doflamingo will definitely not let your Violet stroke his hair, and said with a smile, yes, I do think so, the Don Quixote family, really it's too powerful, we can't defeat them at all, no matter how much we forbear and secretly accumulate strength, whether it's 3 years or 5 years, it's the same. Violet sighed and said with a wry smile, Doflaming. Brother's power is really too huge. Although we are getting stronger and our strength is gradually improving, we can't catch up with their speed. Over time, this gap will only widen. In the end, there is nothing we can do, the country is truly ruled by them, and there is no other possibility. Violet looked at the two of them, his expression became very serious, and he said loudly, Father, and Becca, we must borrow external force. Trust me, this decision is definitely the right one. King Riku and Becca both became quiet, and they didn't reply immediately. The whole room was quiet, and there was no sound for a while. King Riku leaned back and sighed heavily. It turned out that the old face was full of sadness. What did you say? The father did not know. But what can we do? In the face of such a terrifying opponent, we can only hide in the ground and develop our strength secretly. Apart from this, we have no other good way. King Liku shook his head, cheered up a little, looked at Violet, frowned and asked, what you said is indeed reasonable, you must use external forces to ask others for help. But the key question is, have you figured out Chris' situation? If he helped us get rid of the Don Quixote family, and ended up staying here, what should we do? At that time, who can save Dressrosa? Then there is no possibility at all. Sexually, Becca nodded, looked at Violet, and said with great concern, Auntie, let's think of a way to see who else can help us. Chris, I feel too mysterious, and we don't know him well, so don't lure him into helping. Auntie, your safety is the most important thing. I will never allow you to do risky things. Violet waved his hand slightly, on the beautiful and classical wrist, with a relaxed expression, and said with a smile, don't worry, how could I possibly do something I am not sure about? As for the danger, there is absolutely no way. When the time comes to contact Chris, I won't come forward in person. Let my dead soil communicate first, and see the situation. Violet leaned back, crossed Erlang's legs, smiled and said, in this way, Reese is absolutely impossible to guess my identity. When things can be negotiated, that's for the best. If you can't talk about it, it won't hurt, there won't be any. In short, even if you two relax your minds, there will be problems with 2.1, and there will be no small problems. Hearing that Viret believed Exodandon so much, Xiaobecca and King Liku looked at each other. According to what Violet said, there is really no risk in this matter, and there is no problem at all, but all this is just Violet's own thoughts. Can things really go as smoothly as she said? In case Chris finds out her identity, or there are other changes. That's likely to happen. The two still felt inappropriate and didn't want Violet to take any risks. 094. A very gentle and kind girl, Makino officially debuts. Violet. Knowing that you are not a reckless person, and knowing that you can say these words, you must be prepared. King Liku wrinkled his hair and said very seriously, my father does not recommend you to try it, Baiwei cannot be as smooth as you said. However, even if I stop you, I believe you will definitely contact Chris. If that's the case, then do what you want. King Liku looked at Violet and said earnestly, whether things can be successful or not, protecting yourself is the most important thing, understand? Violet nodded heavily, eyebrows curved, a sweet and gentle smile bloomed on her pretty eyelids, and she said something very openly. Father, don't worry, your daughter is not that stupid and will take good care of herself. Lanbecca looked at Violet, combed on her beautiful eyebrows, shook her head slightly, and said with a wry smile, Auntie, to be honest, I don't want you to do this. But Grandpa said so, and I don't have much to say, so I won't stop you. But Auntie, when you get in touch, you must be very, very careful, you must not be found out. That Violet gave her a special look, and said, your auntie is doing things, when did something go wrong? Well, I will be very careful with 967, and I will never be discovered. Well, I can't leave for too long, so as not to be discovered by that bastard Doflamingo. I went back first and finished speaking, stood up quickly, walked towards the door with elegant and noble steps, and walked straight to the door to wait for her. After leaving, Rebecca looked at King Liku's beautiful and delicate face with a puzzled look, and hurriedly asked, Grandpa, why would you agree? If you do this, the aunt is likely to be in danger. King Liku sighed, showing helplessness at the risk of being old, and said with a wry smile, how could Grandpa not know? But since your aunt has made a decision, it will definitely not change. Your aunt is talking and laughing on the surface, but in fact, she is suffering in her heart. Everything is buried in her heart and she doesn't want us to know. King Liku leaned on the chair, stared at the ceiling blankly, and said with a sad face, the country has been invaded, and she still has to do things under the enemy's hands. The grievances here can't be explained clearly in a few words. Alas, I blame your grandfather for being useless. Not only can't protect the people, but even my family suffers. It's all my sins. Seeing King Liku so self-blame, dipped in Becca quickly stood up, walked over to him, slowly squatted down BCDF, and held his old hands, said with great concern, Master, don't think about it, these have nothing to do with you. All of this is Doflamingo's fault. It's because he sent us like this. He really has nothing to do with you. You have to believe that a bad guy like Doflamingo will definitely get his retribution. Nebeka shook his hands, raised her eyebrows, and said softly, Grandpa, I want to go outside and see the sea of flowers. You can go out with me, okay? Hearing what the granddaughter said, King Liku took away his troubles and smiled amiably. Okay, if the granddaughter wants to go out for a walk, of course I will agree. Let's go, it's better to go out and relax. Always staying underground and not seeing the sun, the whole person's heart becomes dark. Rebecca nodded heavily, snorted, her eyebrows were curved, and her pretty eyelids were covered with a sweet smile. She was very happy. Then, the old and young slowly walked towards the door. The picture was so warm. Doctor, So beautiful. 4 days later. Chris, above deck. It's still Padong and Babo. These two guys are the most leisurely, they know how to fish every day. Basas had just finished his training, leaned back in his chair, and said with an irritable expression, "Fuck, I've been looking for 4 days, and I haven't seen anything, so what?" Poison Q was lying on the deck with an ugly smile. "I don't know anything else, it's been 4 days and there are still 26 days left. I have seen the position of the vice captain, and he is waving to me." Helijin C sat aside, playing cards, looking at Poison Q, and said deadly, "Although 4 days have passed, your face has not changed." Changes happened. Luo put away the demon sword and cried, as always, coldly, "The position of the deputy captain must be Lafitte, no need to say more." Van Oka tapped his shoulder with a gun, and said expressionlessly, "I listen to the captain's teaching, I am domineering with 2 colors. In these 26 days, I will definitely be able to learn to armed with domineering colors, and then the position of the deputy captain must be mine. This is the fate period." Ajin waved his head beside him, tried his best to cultivate his air, and said indifferently, "Everyone, don't forget my existence." Li Fight put his hand in front of him with a slight smile. "Very humble, although I really want to be in the position, but strength doesn't allow me to do this. I really hope that a new person can appear to take my place. After all, since I went to sea, I haven't lost a single defeat. If I want to taste the feeling of failure, it must be very painful." Suddenly, a siren sounded from the observation deck. 2 ships were found ahead, one was a merchant ship and the other was a pirate ship. Found ahead. Inside the training room. Listening to the sound of the alarm outside, the girls were stunned for a while, and then Chao Xian showed interest. Karina shrugged her shoulders, her eyes rolled, and she said with a smile, "It's not easy, sailing for so long, it's still a big deal." Back to merchant ship. Head to head, our ship rarely encounters pirates and navies. It has been floating on the sea empty, and Luo Na is floating in the air, laughing and saying something. Mei blinked her big eyes and said with a pure and sweet smile, "The East China Sea is the weakest sea area, and there are relatively few seas here, so of course it's not easy to choose." Nuauchi nodded and agreed with a slight smile. Originally there are not many pirates. But after Chris's bounty came out, there must be a lot more. At this time, Baccarat looked at the busy man in front, smiled and said, "Chris, our luck is here again. The anger is coming again, is it enough for such a mysterious ship?" The Queen Sweetheart was wearing Baccarat, her beautiful eyes were shining, and her pretty face was covered with Xing Chaomei. She swept her pale blonde hair, and said elegantly and generously, "Didn't you say it? It's a merchant ship and a sea-stable ship, where can you find that? Fantastic ship." Chris put the barbell down without hesitation, and walked directly to the door. The girls stood up one by one, and their beautiful faces were full of curiosity. Sheng Xiao above. In a small room, by the window, stood a young woman with short dark green hair and a pale golden headscarf. It was the bar owner from Windmill Village, Makino. As expected, she had to come out occasionally to relax. Otherwise, it's really boring. Makino Jade put her hand on her eyes, blocking the hot sun, looking out the window at the blue sky and white clouds, as well as the rippling sea. Mood, extremely happy, leisurely. On her fair and delicate face, she couldn't help showing a gentle and pleasant smile. She looked so beautiful, she was a kind and gentle person. 095, the innocent and lively beautiful girl, Kaya appears. Suddenly, there was a terrified scream from the merchant ship. "It's not good, the big thing is bad, there is a pirate ship coming over," the tourists shout, like a stone, thrown into the calm lake. Immediately caused a storm. "The pirates are here, it's over, I don't want to die, Ming. Why are there pirates, and what the hell is going on? I have been on such a boat so many times, and I have never encountered a sea stable. What is the situation today? Why is this happening? A few days ago, my friend also said that there are more and more pirates in the East China Sea recently, saying that it was caused by a group called Chris Pirates. I didn't believe it then, now, woohoo. I have also heard that Chris is enough, and his bounty has exceeded 100 million, which has caused many people to learn from him and go to sea to be a sea stable. It is really hateful. Shang Xiao Shang, in a luxurious room. There are 3 men. A woman. Xiaoya, stay in the room, don't run around. Hearing the screams coming from outside, Jiaoni looked at his daughter with a serious expression and ordered Kaya to sit on the chair. Very lady, nodded lightly, and said Chow Chow, father, you don't worry, I won't run around at 12. Jiaoni glanced at the man behind Kia, and said solemnly, Mary, take care of Xiaoya and take good care of her. Then, looking at the housekeeper beside him, he said directly, Krabatel, let's go out and have a look. After finishing speaking, he no longer hesitated, and hurriedly walked to the door. With the palm of his right hand, Crow pushed his glasses, and calmly said, Okay, sir. Soon, the two walked out of the room, leaving only Kia and Mary, a pair of master and servant. Mary, pirates are very scary, right? Will we be okay? Kia is holding a book. Her biggest hobby is reading books and learning that Mary is a very docile person. She smiled kindly and said, Miss, this boat has been sailing for so many years, and there has never been an accident. So don't worry, there will be no problem. Kaya's beautiful eyes lit up, a sweet and lovely smile appeared on her pure and elegant face, and she said happily, really? Well, it's best if it's all right. Everyone is safe and happy. That's the best way. By the way, Mary, let's go to the door and look to the right. I want to observe these sea treasures, whether they are as written in the book. So vicious. It shook his head, and directly objected, Miss, you forgot what the master said just now. The master has explained it. Please don't run around, stay here with peace of mind. Mary looked at Kia and bowed slightly, full of grace, and said, Miss, please don't go out, don't let me give Kia a look at him, snorted, and pretended to be unhappy. My father said that I should not mess around. Run. But I just went to the door to have a look, and I didn't run around, so why not? Lee, let's go to the door to look at it, and we won't go too far, okay? Hearing Kia's words, Meili was helpless. She didn't know how to refuse him. He cared about this young lady very much, loved her very much, and wanted her to grow up happily. After thinking about it seriously, he shook his head slightly, sighed and said, Okay, I promise you. But let's say it first, you can only look at the door, don't go too far, do you hear? But Yami is not only bright and prosperous, her eyebrows are curved, and her beautiful face is full of sweet smiles. She said something very openly. Lee, I knew you were the best for me, hee hee. Come on, let's go outside and watch. Ya stood up quickly, holding the book, squatting and jumping to the door, letting out a silvery laughter, innocent and lively. What a simple girl. Mary quickly took over, followed, and said hurriedly, Miss, don't go so fast, let me go out first to check the situation. With a crunch, the wooden door slowly opened, and Kia's pretty eyes showed a curious look, very cute, and went out directly. At the same time, the wooden door on the opposite side also slowly opened, and a green-haired woman came out, looking at each other. Makino nodded lightly, and a gentle and pleasant joke appeared on her delicate white eyelids. Ah, big sister, you look so beautiful. Kia put the book in front of her and stood quietly. Her slim body was full of the scent of literature, giving people the feeling that she was very ladylike and very quiet. A girl Makino took small steps, smiled and said, You are so beautiful, you are much prettier than your sister. My name is Makino, and I come from Windmill Village in the East China Sea. It's a pleasure to meet you. Kia looked at Makino, blinked her big beautiful eyes, and said with a sweet smile, Sister Makino, my name is Kia, I come from Shirobu Village. This is Mary, an elder I respect very much. Haida Mary nodded to Makino and said very gently, Hello, it's a pleasure to meet you. Makino smiled and said, It's nice to meet you too, Mr. Mary. By the way, when highway is coming, you have to be careful, don't run around. Kia nodded, and said with a smile, Sister Makino, we just heard highway coming, so we came out. Check out the situation. You said, I haven't seen a pirate since I was a child. When I heard Kia talking about a pirate, Makino shook his head slightly and couldn't help but smile and said, in our village, there are people about your age. The little devil head, shouting every day to go to sea. It is useless to persuade him to say that his dream is to be the king of highway, just to go out to sea for an adventure, not to mention him. I plan to look at the window. Makino smiled and asked in a gentle voice, how about you, Kia? Kia nodded her head. Maimu 020 was bright and her smile was pure and sweet. Of course it's fine, I just decided to go there and have a look. Mary, let's take a look there and then go back to the room, that's alright. Mary looked down. It was at the end of the corridor, and it was only a few dozen meters away, so it wouldn't be too far. Kia nodded heavily and called out, I know. Immediately afterwards, there was Makino, who smiled and said, Sister Makino, let's go over. Then, the three of them walked to the window and chatted with Mrs. Makino. What are you doing? Kia threw the book, looked at Makino, looked curious about Baomi, and asked, I feel that my elder sister is so gentle and kind, and I especially like you, elder sister. Makino stroked her dark green hair, smiled sweetly and said, my sister-in-law opened a tavern in Windmill Village, Kia, and my sister also likes you very much. You seem more gentle and ladylike than me. My sister wants to learn from you. Kaya was a little embarrassed by what she said. Her little face showed Rui, and she smiled sweetly and said, where, I'm not as good as you said, Sister Maggot. 096. I found two beautiful women and posted it. This time I posted it. Soon, the three envoys came to the end of the corridor, and looking into the distance, they saw a pirate team, which was quickly approaching to killing everyone on board. Ha ha ha. Damn, Chris can offer a bounty of 100 million yuan, and we can definitely do it. If we rob the Eagle merchant ship and kill them all, our bounty will definitely rise to tens of millions. Stop talking nonsense. Hurry up, I want to kill people, kill a lot of people. Listening to the roars of the sea robbers, feeling such a huge murderous aura, the three of them can't be calm, their faces are full of fear, look very worried. Makino has seen a real big pirate, but even if he becomes the fourth emperor, he is very easy to talk, how can it be so terrifying? Excuse me, I hope the guards on the ship can repel them. Makino shook his head, frowning his slender willow leaf eyebrows, a worried look on his pretty face, and muttered that if we didn't, we'd be finished. Kaya's little hands were clutching the book tightly, her beautiful eyes were full of fear, and the originally fair little danger became even paler. So scary, is this the sea? Why are they so vicious? We didn't provoke them, why did they come to us? Mary was also very worried, and said quickly, Miss, it's too dangerous here, let's go in quickly, hurry up Tilda. Kia's interest in pirates had completely disappeared. She nodded quickly, looked at Makino, and said eagerly, Sister Makino, stay with us, so it's safe to say what Mary wants to persuade. But think about it anyway. He still has a good impression of Makino, a beautiful woman, and feels that this woman is really very gentle and will not hurt Kia. Okay, just chatting with you. No, Kino smiled slightly, dignified and elegant, especially gentle. Then, the three of them did not stop here, and hurriedly walked to Kia's room to the deck of the merchant ship. As the owner of this boat, Downey is obliged to stand at the forefront and give command. Krabattle, why didn't the defenders shoot? Why didn't they fight back? Looking at the pirate ship that was getting closer to the right, Downey frowned and asked with great urgency about Chloe's habitual gestures. He pushed the white glasses with his right hand, and said calmly, My lord, I have already explained to the security team, and let them hurry up to attack the pirates. There has never been a pirate before, causing these guys to take it lightly, eat and wait to die, and have no sense of crisis at all. When I called them just now, they were either drinking or sleeping. Gotta get a gun after a rush. Sir, this defense team is no longer effective, everything still depends on us. Hearing Chloe's words, Johnny shook his body, and was quickly held by Chloe. Johnny shook his head slightly, sighed, and said with a wry smile, "It's over, this is the end of all these pirates. They are all vicious and vicious, how can they let us go? Let's get on the spare boat and leave here immediately. This is the only way in front of us. Johnny is a very caring person, or he can't educate him." Kaya, such a gentle and kind girl, asked him to abandon the sailor on the boat. Running away alone, how is this possible? How did his conscience go? "No, this can't be done, so I will hurt everyone. I can't abandon them." Johnny shook his head again and again without thinking about it, and immediately refused. Chloe knew what Johnny was, and had long guessed that he would. Having said that, he said lightly, "Master, even if you don't think about yourself, you have to think about it for the young lady. These pirates kill people without blinking an eye. They are so bad that they like women. Once they find out that they are beautiful, they will never let go of the beautiful lady. If this is discovered, what should I do?" Chloe looked at Uni, pretended to be eager, and said quickly, "Master, I can't wait any longer, take the young lady away quickly, I beg you tilde. If Oni was hit hard, he reacted instantly. Kia is his most important treasure, more important than his life. Even if he has an accident, he will never allow his daughter to have any danger. Let's take Xiaoya and leave." Without saying a word, Johnny walked quickly, and quickly ran to Kia's room to the pirate ship not far away, and his eyes were ruthless, and he cursed secretly. "Damn pirates, you dare to disrupt my plan, you guys are damned." Jen wanted to kill them all, but this would undoubtedly reveal his identity, so he could only stare at the pirate ship and hurriedly followed Johnny. Koya room. With a loud bang, Johnny quickly opened the wooden door, looked at Kia inside, and hurriedly said, "Xiaoya, come here, let's get out of here quickly." The three people in the room were all startled by the sudden appearance of Johnny. After hearing his urgent voice, the three of them became more and more uneasy, and they all became nervous with Yi. "Father, what happened?" Kia stood up quickly, and asked in a panic. Chloe stood at the door and said quickly, "Miss, don't ask so much, let's get out of here quickly." "What's going on? Let's talk about it on the way, we can't delay any longer." At this moment, the hull shook heavily and swayed. All five of them swayed and almost fell. "Help, please forgive me, I have money here, I can give it all to you. Ah, forgive me, there is still an 80-year-old mother in my family, and the child is only 2 years old. Kill, quack." There were mixed voices from outside, the roars of pirates, and the miserable begging of tourists, one after another, constantly resounding. The situation has reached the most urgent moment. Johnny raised Kia's little hand, his face was extremely flustered, and he hurriedly urged, "Okay, my father." Kaya was about to take a step, when she suddenly remembered Machi-Zu, and quickly said to Johnny, "Father, this is Sister Machi-Nuo. Just let her follow us. Sister Makino is very nice. I like her very much." Only then did Johnny realize that this green-haired girl didn't hesitate at all. He said yes, and let her follow closely. "Leave here." "Thank you, father." Kia was innocent and lively, and didn't feel any danger at all. Looking at Makino, she quickly said, "Sister Makino, let's leave quickly." Makino was deeply moved by the fact that Kia was able to think about herself and cared so much about herself. "Go to the door." "Ha ha ha, I heard the woman's voice, it's so nice. Now that I have grown up, I can have fun, la la la." Before the five of them reached the door, suddenly, an incomparably young voice came from outside the door. Then, a dark-skinned, tall pirate appeared at the door. There were two beauties, and they posted, "This time I posted it straight and before those guys came over. I will play first, ha ha ha." 097, Captain, the battle here seems to be fierce. Everyone was taken aback. A look of fear all over his face. A pirate looks so tall and mighty, and his strength must be very powerful. What can we do now? After all, Johnny is a big boss. He has seen the big world, and he was the first to react. He put Kia behind him and smiled slightly. Sir, I have a lot of gold and silver jewelry here, as long as you. Before he could finish speaking, he was interrupted by this pirate. Lao Su tells you that all the money is originally from Lao Su. As for these two women, I also belong to me, ha ha ha. He carried a machete, flashed his edge, strode over, and said, as for the three of you, I will hack you to death first. Then come back to play with these two little beauties. And when Galga heard these words, the five knew that things could not be done well. At present, he opened his arms and said eagerly, Master, Miss, run away, I'll stop him. Kaya Chow's face was full of anxiety, and she said very worriedly, how can this be done? Let's escape together. The pirate sneered, gave a cruel smile, and said with cold eyes, where can you escape to? Stand up for Lao Su. If anyone dares to escape, he will be caught by Lao Su, and he will definitely break his shield and kill you. His eyes swept the five people fiercely, and finally settled on Chloe, laughed loudly, and said, it's just you, I don't see you as a four-eyed boy, so I cut you first. With a big knife, he rushed towards Chloe. Johnny doesn't have that much dad anymore. What he cares most about is that his precious girl doesn't say anything. He quickly grabbed her little hand and ran to Makino and Mary. Run to the side, looking for a way to escape. Crow habitually pushed his glasses with the palm of his hand. His tone was extremely cold, and he said, you damned pirates, damn you. My plan was so perfect, it was all ruined by you. With a loud bang, two cat claws suddenly appeared, flashing with extremely sharp semming. It was so sharp that the light swished. The figure disappeared instantly, the footsteps moved, and there was no sound at all. The screams sounded, and the pirate fell straight down. I still don't know what happened. Crow didn't hesitate at all, his figure flashed, and he left the room at the moment. His heart was burning with anger, he must kill all these pirates. He is very clear that his identity has been completely exposed. Because of these damn pirates. Immediately afterwards, the screams of pirates continued to sound outside, and the scene just now didn't stop at all. It happened too fast, and the four of them still haven't reacted, completely stunned. Oni is the first to respond. When he came to his senses, looked at the corpse, and said in shock, what's going on? Why does Krabatel have such strength and what is going on? But Ya's mind is simple, and she doesn't think about bad things at all. Her eyebrows are curved, and her pretty face has a sweet smile. It's very good. The housekeeper is too good. Putting his head away, he didn't dare to look at the corpse on the ground. He was afraid and said, my father, is this a dead person? It's scary. Mary is also a docile person, and will not doubt anything at all, he said with a slight smile. Yes, the housekeeper is so powerful, we don't have to worry about it now. You housekeepers are amazing. I didn't hear anything just now. The pirate was killed, and the speed is so fast. Machi is kind-hearted, and he also regards Chloe as a good person. Patted his heart, suppressed his shock, and smiled. Said gently. Johnny is a gentleman, but he is also a businessman, very shrewd. Let's go, let's get out of here quickly. This Krabatel has a problem. Without any hesitation, hurriedly took Kia's little hand and walked quickly to the door. Ya blinked her beautiful eyes, her innocent face was full of doubts, and she asked curiously, Father, what are you talking about? The housekeeper is so good, how can there be a problem? Johnny didn't explain, and said directly, Xiaoya, don't ask these questions, wait until you leave here. The four walked out of the room and quickly fled outside the corridor. At this moment, the last scream sounded, and the entire merchant ship was completely silent. There was no sound. The air was filled with a thick smell of blood. There were corpses everywhere on the deck, one by one, everywhere. The whole scene of the lamp is like hell. Father, I am so sad. Where has Kia seen such a scene? If her face is pale and her beautiful eyes are full of fear, she is really frightened. Johnny comforted and said, Xiaoya, bear with it, we can leave here soon. Suddenly, a cold voice rang out. Where are you going? With a bang, Crow instantly appeared in front of the four of them, staring grimly at whether they were going to take the spare boat. If that's the case, then there's no need to go. Because the first thing I did when I left the room was to destroy it. Crow pushed his glasses with his palm, and said calmly and rationally, since I have revealed my identity, how could I let you guys leave? Today, you are all going to die here. Mary stepped forward, spread his arms, looked loyal, and said angrily, how can you do this, Crabatel? How good the master and the young lady are to you, how can you copy them? I will not allow you to hurt the master and the lady. Kia clutched Xiaoyao, looked at Chloe with a horrified face, and said tremblingly, Dad, you're joking, don't you love Xiaoya the most? You must be 640 joking with us, right? Makino frowned, looked at Yokia and said, Xiaoya, it seems that we have all been deceived by him. This housekeeper, he is not a good person at all. All this is Zhao who pretended to be. Ni nodded, agreed with what Makino said, made Crow right, and said very angrily, Crabartle, how Xiaoya and I have treated you. You must know that when you fell at my door, you were a tortoise. For a breath, if Xiaoya hadn't asked me, let me take you in. You are already dead now, how can you stand here? I hope you look at this kindness, let us go, and spare us. Johnny looked at Chloe and pleaded, I can give you a lot of money, so that you can live a good life in the future, I just hope you can let us go. Crow pushed his glasses again and sneered, tell you, I'm not called Crabattle at all. My name is Chloe. Don't talk nonsense, you all die. As for your property, I will go back to Shirobu village and take it all. As soon as the voice fell, he stepped forward and walked towards the four of them. At this moment, a loud laughter came over to the captain, who came here to fight fiercely, way ha 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 ha. 098, here comes the wisest newcomer. Is this called intense? Poison Q smiled strangely and said, I still miss the battle in Kokoja village, where a lot of murlocs were poisoned. Helafit turned his cane and said modestly as always, the roars of these pirates have been mentioned several times. Our pirate group. It seems that they went out to sea to become pirates because they saw the captain's bounty. Ajin nodded and said something indifferently, no surprise. After all, the captain's bounty is too high, and he has played a leading role. Hearing the sudden voice, the five of them looked over and saw the leader, a young man in black clothes and black trousers. He put his hands in his trouser pockets, and although he stood there casually, he exuded a certain majesty that looked particularly mysterious and powerful. As for the man behind him, there are both men and women, and there are a lot of them. Who are you? Chloe stopped, and habitually pushed his glasses with his palms. The cat's claws on his hands were still stained with blood, adding a bit of murderous aura. The four Makino looked at each other, and they couldn't even describe the situation. Who was this group of people who suddenly appeared? Johnny turned his head the fastest. Knowing that the opportunity was coming, he quickly looked at the young man in the front and said respectfully, Lord, please save us. If you can save us, I will definitely pay a large sum of money, and I beg you to help us again, thank you all. After speaking, he bowed to Chris. The three of Makino, also aware of the danger of the situation, hurriedly learned the practice of fistula, bowed to Chris and begged the adults to help us. So many pirates outside were all killed by Chloe, which shows his strength, that is very powerful. Now he is eyeing a few of them. Even if Makino and Kia are gentle and kind, they know that death is approaching. Span. If this group of people don't help, they will only have one result. Makino and Kia are very useless to us. I don't care about these nabosses shrugging their shoulders and sneering. Luo looked at Chloe with disdain, and said coldly as always, looking at this situation, the tourists were killed by pirates, and Heifu was killed by this guy. The strength seems to be good. Hawkins was playing cards with a lifeless expression, judging from his appearance, he has a lot of potential. Van Oka tapped his sore shoulder with a gun and said expressionlessly, his fate is already doomed when he meets us. Queen Sweetheart looked at Makino and Kia and smiled, you are such a gentle beauty, don't worry, since we are here, we will definitely help you through the difficulties. Mei Mei blinked her big eyes and said with a smile, I met you. It's dangerous. She's holding a book. She's a beauty who likes to read books. Corona flew around in the air and let out a laughter of silver bells. If that's the case, let them join us. I feel that they are both very good. Ha 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 ha. At this moment, Crow rolled his eyes again, looked at Chris and the others coldly, and said in a calm tone, you shouldn't be here. Now that the matter is known to you, then you can only let you go to the death team and disappear in an instant, and he cannot be found. Seeing the strange speed, Makino and the four were shocked again. At Crow's speed, if you want to kill them, you can't resist it without any effort. Hope they can beat the bastard. Gaoni looked at Chris and the others with a look of anticipation. Kia looked at the young man in black and whispered to Gu Makino, Sister Makino, don't you think the man in black is very mysterious? Makino nodded lightly and smiled gently, yes, you can see that he is not nervous at all with his hands in his trouser pockets. He's definitely strong. Mary glanced at Makino and asked curiously, why are you so sure? Makino stroked deeply. Fading, Mei-chu blinked, smiled sweetly and said, because I have seen a man like him before, and he was so calm. Very good speed. Lafayette turned his cane, took a step, and said politely, to deal with a little guy like you, where do you need the captain to do it yourself? It's a pity that no matter how fast you are, if you are not domineering, your strength is destined to be at the bottom. As soon as the voice falls, the cane is swept to the left. Chloe had just arrived at Lafitte's left, and the cat's paw was about to catch it, when he suddenly found that the opponent had attacked and had no time to react. With a bang, he was directly knocked out. With a bang, Lafayette instantly got close to Chloe and said with a slight smile, I'm sorry, your speed is far worse than mine. After speaking, before Crow stopped, he pointed his stick to his neck, as humble as ever. Join us and you will become stronger. Otherwise, you will be slaughtered today. Akin looked at Lafitte's figure and said indifferently, as expected of the deputy captain, his reaction power and speed are both Hawkins and a dead man, and he calmly said, being a deputy captain, you have the best strength. Suspected that Poison Q showed a strange joke, coughed and said, there are still 20 days. This position is mine. Seeing that Chloe was defeated, the four of Makino were extremely shocked that Chloe was already fast enough. I didn't expect that the white man dressed in this drama was faster than him. And this person is only the deputy captain, so how strong the captain in black is really shocking. It's amazing. Kia looked at Lafitte's back, her beautiful eyes were shining, and her pretty face was full of surprise. Makino shook her head slightly, and said in awe, I'll just say, he must be very strong. The strong people don't bother to take action at all, and the crew below can solve it. I observed him just now, and he hasn't said a word until now, and his expression has not changed at all, he has always looked the same. What a mysterious young man. Mary nodded and said in agreement, listening to what you said, this captain is indeed very powerful. Johnny finally smiled, and I was very happy to say something. Looking at the situation, we are finally safe now. At that time, Crow habitually pushed his glasses, directly ignoring the hand that pointed at him, and asked calmly, I want to know, what is your captain's strength? He's also a very smart person with a terrifyingly high IQ. I know I'm no match for this white man. If you keep fighting, you will definitely be killed. Strong, not ordinary strong. Lafitte put away his cane and said politely, as for the strength of the captain, this has always been a mystery because our captains do not know how strong he is. Well, one last time, Miao Shi, would you like to join us? Crow put away the cat's claws, and said calmly, since the captain is so powerful, joining in will definitely be the right choice. Bai Wan, I'm still very young, but I don't want to die so soon. 099, another devil fruit, Superman, wearing fruit. This guy's strength is good, Lao Su recognizes you, Wei ha ha ha. Bashes raised his arms and laughed. Luo held the demon knife and cried coldly, and said coldly, there's a new member coming to save the battle for the squad leader. Indeed, Ah-jin frowned and said indifferently, his speed is too fast, I'm not right now. His opponent must hurry up and cultivate. If he fights with me, he will definitely lose. Fan, Ka carrying the gun, his tone is very calm. At this time, Jouni led the three of Makino and walked to Chris. Thank you for your help. Thank you very much. Zioni bowed to Chris, and said very gentlemanly, I'll send some gold and silver jewelry later to express my gratitude and lure you to accept it. Makiju was right on Chris. Her eyebrows were curved, and she was on the danger of a beautiful and clean show, showing a gentle and pleasant smile, and said something in a sweet voice. Sir, thank you for your help. My name is Maki, 597 inches Nuo. I come from Windmill Village, and I am the owner of a tavern. If you come to Windmill Village in the future, I will pack all the drinks and invite you to drink for free. Reese, blinking his beautiful eyes, smiled sweetly and said, I'm from Shirobu Village, you can come to my house if you're free in the future. Karina looked at Makino and Kia, with a sly look in their beauty, and said with a smile, I think they are very gentle, they are very suitable for joining us. Why don't you pull the two of them in, so that you can chat and talk? Perona danced in the air, clapped her little hands, clapped her hands, and said a quick sentence. Head to head, let them join us, I like them very much. Holly Haley Meaty nodded lightly, stroked her pale blonde hair, and said, I also like them very much, but people can agree. The sweetheart queen looked at Ruome and smiled, it's not difficult at all, it just depends on whether Sister Bakura is willing or not. If Sister Bakura speaks, then Betty, who will definitely not refuse, took a breath and said lightly, Barbara's sister Kara's fruit ability is indeed too powerful, no one can refuse her. At this time, Bakura stepped forward, looked at the four of them, raised her eyebrows, and said gently and generously, Hello, my name is Bakura. Two gentle ladies, I want you to join the team, do you know? Among all people, she is the one who knows Chris the most and knows the most secrets. Chris will inevitably become the king of a country, and even the master of this world. Then, there must be no shortage of women by his side. As long as they are beautiful women, Bakura will not let them go, they all belong to Chris, don't even think about running away. As for whether Chris is interested in women, it doesn't matter. Anyway, it's definitely not wrong to include beautiful women in the team. Can I join? Makino's beautiful eyes lit up, and her extremely beautiful face showed a secret look. She said very excitedly, I'm going out recently to relax, and I can join this team. This is definitely the best for me. Kia nodded lightly, her fair face was full of interest, and she looked extremely apprehensive. But my father never wanted me to go out, for fear that I would be in danger. If I could follow you guys, that would be really great. Kia turned to look at Jouni, shook his arm, and Sa Zhao said, Sir, let me follow them. Well, is it good? Mary bowed to Ruo Jouni. His tone was full of pleading, and persuaded Miss has always wanted to go out for a walk, and now I happen to have such a good opportunity. You promise? Miss Jouni nodding, patting Kia's shoulder, she said gently, I used to be afraid of your accident, so I always disagreed. But the situation is different now. They are so powerful that they can completely protect your safety. There is no danger at all. Moreover, there are so many big sisters in this team, they will definitely take good pictures of your Oni, look at his daughter, smile amiably, and say gently, Xiaoya, go see this world, like this you will become more mature. The girls were not surprised at all by the reaction of the four, but it was inevitable that they would feel their emotions. After all, this scene is really amazing. Sister Bakura's ability is really too strong. Nami looked at Bakura's figure, blinked her big eyes, her pretty face was full of complicated colors, and Nuauchi nodded high, smiled and said, This is the so-called wish come true, there is no way to explain. Juhi tucked his hair up, was generous, and said softly, As long as Bakura says it, it will be realized in the dark. There is no logic, there is no reason in this, it is full of incredible power. Karina turned her beautiful eyes and said with a smile, if Sister Bakura wants to hunt for treasure, it is simply because this ability is really too powerful. Perona, who can't appear in the world, is floating in the air. I feel that this picture is very interesting. I can't help laughing. So the person I admire most is Sister Bakura, ha 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 hali. At this time, Bakura looked at the four of them, her eyebrows were curved, and she said with a smile, Makino, Kia, you are welcome to join us. You can rest assured that the strength of our ship is very strong, and it is guaranteed that it will not encounter danger. Makino and Kia nodded hurriedly and said in unison, we really believe in this, we won't doubt it at all. Suddenly, Johnny frowned, looked at Mary, and said directly, go to Xiaoya's room and bring that devil fruit over. Mary was stunned for a moment, not daring to ask any more questions, and nodded quickly and said respectfully, okay, after the young master has finished speaking, quickly turn around and hurriedly walk forward. Father, what are you doing with that evil fruit? Ya looked at Johnny with a curious look on her pretty face. She couldn't help asking. Before Johnny could answer, Bosses was the first to speak. Is there a devil fruit? I'll just say, since the captain has appeared, the good luck will definitely not be too bad. Bashas shrugged his shoulders and said with a big laugh, if you just accept that guy, then the luck will be just as good. Now there is a devil fruit, and now it's worth seeing. Way ha 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 poisonous Q's eyes are gloomy. He glanced at Ajin and Fanyoka, and finally glanced at Crow, with a very ugly smile. He said that there are only 3 people not capable. So even if there is a bad fruit, it can only be eaten by them. It's cheap enough for these guys. Hawkins is tall and 4.2 cold and said, let's come, our good luck has always existed. Hawkins nodded and said in a low voice, the strength of the team has been getting stronger. Now that you have joined them, then of course Father hopes that they will become stronger. Only in this way will you be safer, and Father will not have to worry about anything. Then, he turned to look at Chris and said with a slight smile, Sir, I have a fruit of evil here, called Superman's wearing fruit. A little treat, please accept it as an adult. I hope to take more photos of the little girl in the future, please. 100. Good news, great news, the mysterious ship has finally been discovered. Wearing the fruit, it sounds like it can pass through the ground. Fit has. Chloe came over, smiled gently and said something. Crow pushed on his glasses and said with a blank face, not only can you pass through the ground, but any non-living body can pass through. In this case, this evil mansion fruit is very good. Agent's expression is still so indifferent, his tone is cold. Bashas laughed loudly and said loudly, it's not bad, it's simply too powerful. As long as you can't beat it and drill into the soil, who can do what to you? This is the best way to escape and save your life. Way ha 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 poison Q's vicissitudes face, a rare expression of regret, if this fruit is found, I will definitely eat it directly. Luo wrote Fan Yuka, still so indifferent, and said his own provincial law, the evil nightmare fruit, which is very suitable for you. If you have the ability to escape and cooperate with your spear skills, then if you want to assassinate your opponent, I am afraid that many people will not be able to prevent it. Hawkins nodded and agreed, it's really very suitable, it's like a tiger when it's matched. At this moment, footsteps came, and I saw Mary holding a small wooden box and running over quickly. Oni looked at Chris and smiled slightly. Said a very gentleman, my lord, please accept it. Before Chris could speak, Fanyoka spoke in advance. He looked at Chris, his solemn eyes showed a rare look of anticipation, and he said a little excitedly, Captain, can you give me this devil fruit? Here. Chris still put his hands in his trouser pockets and said calmly, after you can finish speaking, just turn around without saying a word, and walk outside to hear Chris say this. Fanyoka couldn't help but say something respectfully. Captain, you are indeed the most wise god to be able to join the Chris C regiment, it is really a matter of fate. Bosses patted him on the shoulder and laughed loudly, don't be fate, just get on the devil fruit and continue to set off. Luo looked at Hawkins and said lightly, this time his strength must have improved a lot, and the competition has become more intense. Hawkins nodded and replied in a low voice, "We have to work harder, otherwise we will be left far behind everyone's strength." They've gotten stronger, which is a good thing. Lafitte turned his cane and showed a humble smile, sincerely happy. Seeing that these men had all left, Bakara smiled and said to Kia, "Let's talk more, we'll wait for you on the boat." Then, the women did not stop here, and went out one after another. At this time, there were only 4 people left here, 2 women and 2 men. "Xiaoya, go, father has nothing to explain, just take good care of yourself." Jiaoni patted her shoulder, smiled amiably and said, "Those sisters, I look pretty good, just go and go at ease." Ya nodded, raised her eyebrows, and smiled sweetly, "Father, if it's okay in the future, I will call you often." "Sister Makino, let's go, don't make them wait for a long time." Makino stroked her hair and said with a sweet smile, "Okay, then let's go." Pull up Kia's little hand, and the 2 of them walked towards each other. Taking small steps, talking and laughing, he walked outside. Melly looked at Kia's back and showed a gentle smile. "Miss this time, after going out for a trip, she will definitely become very mature after returning. This is exactly what I want to see." Yanyuni smiled slightly, and said with relief, "Xiaoya is too kind, she has never experienced hardships, this is actually very detrimental to her growth. It's just right now, let her go for a while and increase her knowledge. This kind of life is the perfect Chris." On the deck, Basas looked at the direction of the training room, shrugged his shoulders, and said in confusion, "There is a problem that I have not been able to figure out." Poison Q smiled strangely and said, "Aren't you confused? Why is your strength weaker than me?" "Motherfucker, can you please not interrupt?" Bashes glared at him, frowned and said, "Our captain is a cultivator, everyone knows that he is like a cold machine. Why do so many women like him? Is there any mystery?" Ajin waved to the side and sneered, "There are so many whys, because he is the captain." Hawkins played the cards and said deadly, "From the looks of it, the captain is destined to be loved by many women." Luo carried the ghost and cried, but he was still so cold and cold. "I don't know what he said, but the captain has a domineering look. This is the most attractive to women. Any man with such domineering has a halo on his body, that kind of charm. All women are unable to resist, which is the so-called attracting bees and butterflies." Klo pushed his glasses and said calmly, "The strong department is like this. It is not surprising that beautiful women love heroes since ancient times. The captain is so powerful, and women like him. It is normal that Lafitte ignored their conversation, looked at Van Oka, and asked with a smile, "How is it, how do you feel?" Fan Yaoka nodded lightly, and Jun Jian gave a faint smile, "Very good, it really is the most suitable bang for me." The person disappeared instantly, and no one could find him. A slight voice sounded, Fan Yaoka slowly rose from below the deck, and finally returned to the original state. "Your opponents must have a headache." Gifton said politely, "King of Assassination, I think this title is very suitable for you, Mr. Fan Yaoka." "I am most optimistic about Mr. Fan Yaoka. That one-handed sharpshooting is so powerful. Come on, Mr. Fan Yaoka, you will definitely become the captain of the first team." "Ha ha ha, ask me which team leader I like the most. The question is Fan. Lord Oka, Gashanga, I am really looking forward to the battle for the squad leader. I am so excited, I really miss the Lord Incris." On deck 433. "Damn it." Bashes waved his head, cultivated a domineering look with armament, and said cursingly, "It's been so many days, and there's no news, you're looking for a fart. I think I have to tell the captain and rush directly into the Great Waterway. Isn't it just an ordinary ship, as for wasting time here?" Poison Q leaned on the chair, smiled mysteriously and said, "It's very good, it's better to rush directly to the captain and question why he wastes everyone's time. Anyway, you have to explain to the crew." Bashes glared at him and roared, "Don't keep trying to hurt Lao Su. If you really question the captain, you will definitely be killed." Ajin leaned on the chair, was resting, and said coldly, "Don't worry, I won't be slaughtered. At most, it's just beating Chloe. He has heard about this. He pushed his glasses with the palm of his hand, and said calmly and rationally, anyway, there is Baccarat. You can't run away on this mysterious ship, so wait with peace of mind. There is no doubt that the fate of this ship has already been doomed. Van Oka covered the thief's shoulder with a gun and said a word with no expression. Suddenly, a very excited voice came from the observation deck, shouting the good news. Good news, I have seen the mysterious ship. Good news, good news.